Thank you. The special meeting is called back to order. Will the secretary please note that all board members are present with the exception of Ms. Pastor. The first item on the agenda is 3B, motion to adjourn the executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn the executive session and a second?
I motion.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Ms. Parra. On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The motion carries. The next item is 3C, motion to instruct the designated representative of the public body regarding matters discussed in executive session as necessary. Is there a motion to affirm instructions given to representatives of the public body in executive session and a motion and a second?
I motion.
I will second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Ms. Parra. Is there any discussion? On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. The motion carries. Motion to adjourn the special meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn the special meeting? And a second.
I motion.
Second?
A motion has been made by Ms. Parra, seconded by Mr. Prescott. On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. The motion carries. We are adjourned. The regular meeting is called to order. Will the secretary please note that all board members are present with the exception of Vice Mayor Laura Pastor. Please note that due to ongoing COVID-19 precautions, there is limited in-person seating for today's meeting, and the meeting is also being live streamed. We will please stand as Mr. Marquez leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is 1D, approval of minutes of the governing board retreat held April 8th, 2022, the special meeting, executive session, and the regular meeting held on April 14th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented, and is there a second?
I motion.
I second.
Okay, a motion has been made by Ms. Parra, seconded by Ms. Ross. Is there any discussion? On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, saying nay. The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is 2A, recognitions and accomplishments. Tonight, we will celebrate two outstanding educators. Mr. Gallardo will read our first celebration.
Thank you, Madam President or Senator. I have no idea what title to give you, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. I have definitely have the honors of presenting our first award to Mr. John Martin Rigsby and the Trevor Brown Marketing Program. And Madam President, the Trevor Brown High School Marketing Program, under the leadership of Mr. John Martin Rigsby, was recently named the NRF Foundation 2022 Rise Up Partner of the Year. Mr. Rigsby is a CTE marketing teacher, DECA advisor, and instructional leader at Trevor Brown. He serves as a student, a Black Student Union sponsor, and the vice president of the Phoenix Union Black Alliance. Mr. Rigsby also holds the position of treasurer for both Arizona DECA and the Arizona Marketing Educators Association. Mr. Rigsby a product of the Career and Technical Education Program, believes that all students deserve access to a high-quality education, which includes career and technical education programming. He is committed to providing students with access to the industry-recognized credentials that will aid them in obtaining their first job. The NRF Foundation, awarded and presented by Old Navy, celebrates the program for its innovative use of the NRF Foundation Rise Up training and credentialing program to positively impact individuals and communities. Trevor Brown marketing team traveled to New York City to attend the NRF Foundation honor reception as part of the recognition and received a surprise donation of $10,000 for its program. Join us in congratulating Mr. Rigsby and his students on this prestigious recognition. Congratulations, Mr. Rigsby.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this recognition. I am excited to have brought this award back to our district and to Trevor Brown. I'm super excited about the donation that we received that will help our CTE students travel and get industry experience. And thank you all for supporting CTE at the high level that we do here in Phoenix Union to be able to provide these industry credentials to our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Will you come up and we'll take a picture?
Yeah. And Board Member Ross, are you ready to read our
ma'am.
next celebration?
Yes, ma'am. So I get the honor and the pleasure to introduce Mr. Kareem Neal, National Teachers Hall of Fame of America. So, Mr. Neal, be patient with me. You've done way too much to me to try to memorize everything, so I have to read it, okay? So I won't be making eye contact. I'll be reading, okay? All right. Mr. Neal recently became the first teacher in Arizona's history to be inducted into the National Teacher Hall of Fame. Let's stop there. That's a big deal. The Hall of Fame annually honors 5 teachers who have demonstrated commitment and dedication to teaching our nation's children. After rigorous nomination and application process, Hall of Fame inductees receive a permanent display in the National Teachers Hall of Fame, a signet ring, a lapel pin, and a bronze bell tower award. Wow, get it, Kareem? Mr. Neal has served the Maryville community as a CBC teacher for 15 years. A generation of students and staff at Maryville have felt his impact inside and outside of the classroom. He has been a unified Special Olympics coach for 5 years. Kareem is a member of the National Education Association, Arizona Education Association, National Network of State Teachers of the Year, and Phoenix Union Certified Teachers Association. I told you it's too much to try to remember. He also serves on the board of the National Board of Professional Teaching Standards. He has been recognized for educator excellence by the Maryville Revitalization Corporation in 2016. awarded the Phoenix Union High School District Teacher of the Year in 2017, received the Diversity Award from the Arizona Educational Association in 2018, and was named the Arizona State Teacher of the Year in 2019. Please join me as we congratulate Mr. Kareem Neal for being inducted into the National Teacher Hall of Fame.
Mr. Neal, if you're good, let us take a picture with you first, and then we're going to engage in a dialogue really quickly.
Cool.
So we're going to come take a picture first.
Same spot.
Yeah, same spot. All right, Mr. Neal, congratulations again, and thanks for filming with me last week. This is such an incredible honor that we actually thought that we would spend a little bit of time with Mr. Neal, and have asked him to engage in potentially a Q&A with the board, but wanted him to start with a question. One thing I heard from a couple board members and community members is, how do you go from first-year teacher to National Hall of Fame teacher? Like, how do you get to that status? You saw this resume of award, state, national, district. What's that journey look like, and how did you go from first-year teacher to Kareem Neal, the most popular teacher in Arizona? Go for it.
All right. Can I lift it? Or what? Can I take it off? Oh, cool. Well, one day at a time, definitely. When I started teaching, I have my trees in. I just realized I'm lisping. But when I started teaching, I went in it just for passion. It was like I was a chemical engineering major, Special Olympics event, changed my life one day, and I was like, I'm going to do this thing, right? And so that was the easy part, going into a classroom full of folks with special needs back in New Jersey before I got here 22 years ago. Going for that was simple. There were times in my career that it was hard for the reasons it's hard for all teachers, right? I had 3 jobs for 10 years. It was funny. In 2016, which is when, awards started happening and all that, I was actually driving Uber and picked up Elena Adams one night, and she was sad for me. And I was like, don't pity me, I'm all right. I'm doing it, I'll be there. And, so that kind of stuff was hard, and sometimes it was hard based on how the world viewed us, right? It changed a lot. I started teaching 24 years ago, and it seemed like we were universally loved as teachers 24 years ago. It was like if I said I was a teacher, everyone was like, wow, it's great, it's important, all of the things. And as that started eroding, that's been a little harder too. But when I think about awards and things like that I feel like comes from I think my passion shows. I don't think there's many people who would say they have talked to me about education or been in my classroom where they don't feel that. So I'm assuming that's that, but that's also the thing that has kept me going through the hard times. So I've built, I feel like in room 421 in Maryville, a community that has become my family here. My other family, they're all in New Jersey. So, so that it makes it easy for me. Like the reporter, after I got Teacher Hall of Fame, and she was running down my accolades, and she was like, so what's next? When are you gonna, and I was like, well, I'm gonna be teaching at Maryville until I'm not working anymore. You know what I mean? And so, you can mark my words, by the way. All the cool jobs and turning them on.
So let me, President, one more question, and then board, you can lean in. I've heard you speak before about when you first got into teaching, it could feel isolating. I was a teacher, and if you're not careful, you just go to your four walls and you're on an island, and then you talked about coming out and building community and being a part of community clubs, sports team. So talk about, I guess, giving advice to other teachers, or that transition from isolated in my room to being a part of this community, I think is a great part of your story.
Yeah, and I started in only special schools. So the school I taught at in New Jersey is called the Developmental Learning Center of New Providence, New Jersey, and it's a school for kids with autism. And then I came to Arizona and I worked at the Children's Center for Neurodevelopmental Studies, and it's also a school for children with autism. And so that was a little different. It was very, very small schools, only a couple teachers. And so I did have that. And I can't lie, when I was recruited, it was odd. My resume was online. That's actually how I got to Phoenix Union. I don't know if anyone will remember this. And Laura, I came here and she met me and was like, I know the perfect spot for you. I don't even know if you will remember, but I remember clearly. And she was like, Maryville High School. And I was like, I don't even know what that is, right? And so when I got to Maryville, I had preconceptions about what a general ed student was. And I didn't love it, you know what I'm saying? I was like, no. So I did isolate myself when I got to Phoenix Union, actually. And so my first year at Maryville, anyone who was teaching there at the time would tell you, like we didn't know him, which was weird, because people don't even think you could possibly be at Maryville without knowing me now. And so it's funny, I was walking on a Saturday, I was working one Saturday, and they were doing the diversity club that I now run, and a teacher said, you got to see this. The teacher was Elena Adams, by the way. I know y'all know her. And she was like, you got to check this out. And I went and I checked it out, and then it changed everything. And I said, I've always been a person, like as soon as I grew up, my mom, she did the breakfast program for the Black Panthers. My dad was an activist. And so I went to college with that spirit, and I was doing a lot of activism in Newark, New Jersey, which people who know that the civil rights struggle know that was a big space. And I was doing a lot of advocating for Black people and Black folks, right? And then I started working with students with cognitive delays, and I dove into advocating for those folks. But that was it. These were my two jams, and I was good with that. And so when I saw what was happening at Maryville, it changed everything. It was like, again, kind of one day, I was like, okay, I got it. It's got to be for all people. You can't do, this disjointed version of advocating for young folks. You got to do it for everybody. And then it was just like I decided that, Maryville was about to change, whether they wanted to or not.
Awesome, thank you. Board, feel free, it's your time. Turn it back to President, whatever questions or comments the board has.
Okay, Ms. Ross.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. I just wanted to acknowledge your hard work. It's not easy to be an educator now, as you mentioned in your speech in general, but also you're a Black educator, and also you're a Black male educator. And so I just want to acknowledge your perseverance, your dedication, and let you know that we as a board and as a district see you, and we appreciate you.
Thanks, I appreciate y'all.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Parra.
Thank you. Mr. Neal, I think what makes you so special is the heart that you have. You, we know you love our kids. When you say you've created a community for your kids at Maryville, you really, really do. You love them. And so, super, super grateful for that, because that, when Dr. G asked, what takes you from, first year to 24 years, it's the heart that you have for this work. So, thank you for showing up, as your full self. Thank you for loving our kids unapologetically, regardless of where they are and who they are. You love every single kid that comes into your classroom, and, that's what makes you so special. Thank you.
Yeah, they love me, right? And so I think people see a person like me, particularly we were joking about my internet presence and all the world's following me and all of that stuff, and most popular person in Arizona. People don't realize that there's loads of times in my life that I feel super lonely. Like I live alone, I don't have children, I was married, but I don't longer have a wife. And so, you know, my world is sometimes lonely, but it never is when I'm there, you know? And so it's easy for me to give them a fraction of the love they give me because they give me it all. And that is one of the beautiful things about CBT. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't know about CBT programs, but they're giving you exactly what they're feeling, right? So if I don't do something right or I'm not being myself, they let me know outwardly, not just, oh, we're gonna mumble about him behind our backs, right? And so, it's like when you give love to people, it's how it happens. They give love to you, right? And so that's what I prefer, and that's what my students prefer, so it's easy.
Supervisor?
Thank you, Madam President. And I just want to echo some of the comments that have been made and just thank you for everything you do on behalf of the students there in Maryville. I'm a product of the Maryville community, born and raised. I grew up in the playgrounds of Maryville. Been there my entire life. The rest of my family have all moved further west. Maryville's home. And just want to thank you for everything you do, not only just Maryville, but all of Phoenix Union. It's just appreciative. I know the struggles that many of our students face and the hardships they face, you know, economic and social challenges, and to have a teacher like yourself at this status to be able to stand up and say, hey, you know, you're loved and the support you give. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thanks. I love Maryville, man. I love Maryville.
And point out that both awards went to schools that are in Ward
Maryville
5,
and
just to
Trevor.
let you know, okay? Put that on the record, all right?
Mr. Marquez?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Mr. Neal, congratulations. Thank you for your service to the district and the Maryville High School. Two things you said caught my attention. First, somebody like you had to drive Uber and hold 3 jobs, and I'm curious to know from your acquaintances and colleagues, how many folks are still driving Uber to make it and get by as a teacher in the state of Arizona. And then secondly, we don't get to, I got to meet you last week, at Maryville specifically, but, I don't get a chance to visit every high school as much as that I'd like to. And so what do we as a board need to know about Maryville, and what can we do to keep making strides there?
All right. So first question about teachers. I think it's really odd that our world of like extreme and cold capitalism is okay with teachers not making money. It's really weird that they think that that's going to be okay, and that is okay, and that we will still stay in the profession and take that, right? Because it was 2016, and I felt like I was a pretty accomplished teacher at the time, and a coworker was pitying me because she saw what I was doing. That's not the easiest thing to take, and I wish they knew those stories. And when I think about when it changed for me financially, and a lot of that happened because of 2019 and because of all of this kind of stuff, but the extra time I have to do lessons now and to make things better for my students now, people aren't seeing that either, right? They think about, teachers and their breaks and things like that. But the fact that most young teachers have to go and quickly go to another job, as opposed to being inspired by something that's happening. I remember I was traveling during COVID time, and I was in New York, and I was in Central Park, and I was like, me and my students talked about the World Trade Center. I'm going to go there and teach a lesson from there. You know what I'm saying? But you don't have time to do that kind of stuff. You don't have time to think like that. You don't have time to build lessons that inspire students every day when you are working maybe 3 nights a week, driving Uber or whatever people are doing. So if it doesn't get fixed, you keep having that middle thing. You don't have that thing where it's like you have the absolute best. We always want the absolute best. And I think sometimes people even think like, oh, Kareem must have just been, this amazing teacher for 20-something years, and we always got the best of him because of his passion, but y'all didn't, because I was working 3 jobs, and that's not okay. There's a lot of things that people talk about when they talk about fixing education and stopping the kind of, I think they call it mass exodus or something like that of teachers and the recruitment and retention efforts. If pay is not good, it is not going to work. And even if it works, again, you don't get the full version of a person. And then about Maryville, so when I got to Maryville, because I wasn't born and raised in Arizona, I heard friends was like, oh, you're going to work at Scaryville, they said, right? And I don't know if people still say this 20-something years later. I think people know I would be upset. So I remember, I got there, and it's like, oh, it's going to be pretty wild. And I grew up in a really, really tough place, too. So I was like, at Maryville, the sense of community for the whole school is so strong that like most of the students view Maryville as this haven for love and for acceptance. And it is wild to me how free students feel on the campus, right? And that is huge. And when I think about how typically excluded students like my students are, and how they're far from it at Maryville, and that's not a me thing, right? One person doesn't do that. And so it is just a place where people, like on our Maryville campus, people feel free, and they feel like they can give us their true selves, and that's a gift. That doesn't happen everywhere.
Mr. Sanford.
I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for the district and for our students, and a huge congratulations for this award and all the previous awards. So thank you so much.
Thanks. I love the awards.
Anyone else? I just want to say thank you. You make us so proud, and I love you, and thank you, for what you do for our kids, for what you do for us, and for the recognition you're bringing to Phoenix Union and to Maryville High School. You're the best, and I love you. Thank you.
Thank you. I love Phoenix Union, and I love Maryville, and I ain't leaving.
President Alston, yeah, for the members of the community and watching, if you don't read the newspaper, the paper, Kareem Neal was front page above the fold for people who may know that, and so we framed his newspaper article for him, and it was such a long article it took 2 picture frames to frame it for him. So congratulations.
And I have a copy of that newspaper at home. I'll make sure that I get it to you, Kareem.
I got one. I got one at 9 o'clock at night. It was so hard because I was like, where do people get newspapers? And then I started just randomly going to Circle K, and I finally found like just one copy of the Circle K near Scottsdale where I play basketball. And the dude, he checks it out, and he was like, that dude looks like you.
That's wonderful. The next item is 3A, reports from employee organizations. Tonight we will begin with CTA. Dr. April Coleman.
Look at that. Yeah.
All righty. So good evening, President Alston, governing board members, Dr. Guest, and I'm going to be fairly short tonight, but I'm going to wear 2 hats. So I'm here as the CTA president. I'm also here as the president of the Phoenix Union Foundation for Education, and there's good news, right? So tonight is our night for thanks and congratulations. It's all about staff appreciation, educator appreciation, and I'm going to start with our IBN team. We did some really good work this year. We haven't ratified anything yet. We have a vote that's coming, but we did some really good work this year. So Esteban Flemings is our CTA vice president. Dan Hull works out of CEE, Rob Melendez from Central, Dr. Elena Payton from Fairfax, and Chad Renning from Metro Tech. Sorry we don't have anybody from Trevor Brown yet. Give us some time, we'll make it happen. Next slide, please. I also want to thank Carrie Repp, who has been the chair for our Committee on Quality Teaching and Learning. We have a partnership, I think, I'll call it a partnership with our Teaching and Learning Division, where they allocate funds to CTA every year, and we use that for professional learning opportunities. Carrie worked really well with the Corwin Group, and we offered 2 sessions, technically 3 sessions. We got books for our members. They earned up to 12 hours of professional development, and we did it for them at no cost. And it was about $600 per employee. So we hope that next year we'll be able to do equal or better. Carrie and I are meeting with Corwin pretty soon to figure out what opportunities we could pull for next year, so stay tuned for that. Oh, and if someone wants a book, we have a few extras. So now on to the foundation. So congratulations time. We did award mini grants this year for the first time in I think 2 years. And there might be somebody from your ward, supervisor, I'm not sure. You'll let me know. So next slide. All right. Milton Johnson from Bioscience won an award for his STEM Maker and Coding Initiative. Maggie McGraw from Metro Tech for Biology Research Projects. Let's see. Dana Beadle from South Mountain, Ed Mark Reading Program. And Emily McCall, Phoenix Coding Academy for Solar Panels and Electronic Project. So, sorry, Supervisor.
Oh, no, you got one. You're good.
Okay, all right, good. All right. I thought the slide was finished. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, so Matthew Burke from Trevor Brown, New Robots for a robotics program. So there was a team of maybe 4 or 5 of us that looked through all of the applications. We had over 30 applications this year, which was exciting. It was exciting. We hope to have just as many, if not more, next year because we're going to run 2 cycles. So we are accepting applications in August through October for the 2nd semester of next year. And then 2nd semester of next year, we'll be accepting applications for the 23-24 school year. So thank you, everyone. Again, it is staff appreciation. I appreciate all of you, regardless of the job that you have, no matter how small you think your contributions are, they're huge in our eyes. So thank you.
Madam President?
Yes, Mr. Marquez?
Questions for during the reports? Is that possible?
Well, not generally. Did you have a question for Ms. Coleman?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. Given this is our last board meeting before students graduate, what are teachers feeling right now during this last month of school? And us, the next time we'll see you is in June. I hope you get some vacation time, but we'll see you in June. What do you want us as a board to work on going into the summer?
So what are teachers feeling? Tired.
Yeah.
I'm being honest, we're tired. We're overworked just like everyone else in this district, and like many of you sitting in front of me. We've all worked really hard for the last 2 years, and some of us nonstop. We have not had vacations. We won't have one this year either, because we are working summer school and we are planning for next year. We may get a week off, we may get a couple days. Kareem, I don't know, do you get any days? I don't think Kareem gets any days because he's going with me to Chicago for a conference this summer. So we're tired, but we're so grateful to have been able to come back and work with our students this year. It has been such a blessing to be in person and to be safe. And a lot of work went into that. Teachers in classrooms, classified staff ensuring that we had clean buildings to come to. Some of our students being very creative and creating these air circulation purifying things. I'm a scientist, yes, air circulation purifying things. We're tired, but we're also looking forward to what comes next. We've gone through a lot. I won't say that it's over because it isn't. We just had to learn how to adapt and adjust and to move forward, and that's what we're going to do. And as Kareem talked about the economic struggles that many educators face, that's not going away. We did really good this year in IBN. I appreciate the creativity of the finance team, but it's not over. We know what's happening in the street down south of us towards the center of town. We have enemies, I'm just gonna say it. We have people who are not supportive of public education or public educators. We're tired, but we're not giving up. We're not going away. We'll be back, and we hope that everyone that's in here will be back with us and ready to lock arms and educate our students and to get them ready so they can build better futures for us.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman.
Another question?
No, that's it.
Okay, because we're tired.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. And we will be with you. We're not giving up. Ms. Vanessa Jimenez. Hi, Vanessa.
So glad this microphone is back to a better elevation. Good evening, President Alston, Dr. Gesson, all the other lovely leadership people in the room, and the community. We can't do this alone. We're starting our busy time for ESPs. Summer Academy is starting in a few weeks. June 3rd will be our first academy. We have over 500 people signed up. We'll be doing virtual and in person again, and in Spanish and in English. Our Spanish numbers went up, so I'm super excited that the extra work we did to get it out to our night and early morning teams really panned out. So I'm really excited about that. This summer, for the 4 Fridays in June, we'll be doing cultural competency for the first Friday, de-escalation and restorative practices for the second Friday. The third Friday will be ethics, and then to get us ready to come back, we'll be doing creating a cohesive team. It's something that a lot of ESPs have been asking for. How do we build better together? So that's going to be on our last Friday. Something big we want to start on this summer and take into the fall. We did the safety collaborative, and we did a lot of good work. We have positions, we have a magnifying glass on there to see how can we make this better. I'm not asking for a new division, just so you guys know, but we will be focusing really on our maintenance and custodial teams. I'm really focusing on what do they need, what can we do to help bring them up. We know, like I said last month, the shortages are not going to go away, so how do we really focus on those teams and get their voices in the room like we did for the safety collaboratives and have them at the table. So I'm excited to start working with Ms. Tellez and some of our other managers to really look at those teams. And like Dr. Coleman said, this year has been challenging, but we still continue to show up. There's nobody that works in this district that's not passionate, so we will keep working. So I can't say that it hasn't been a challenge. And I really just want to say thank you. The collaboration this year has been, it's phenomenal. The work we've been able to do in IBN, the collaboration with CTA, ADA, and leadership. We couldn't have gotten this far and moved forward without that collaboration. And I know for a lot of districts, they can't say that. So I'm really proud to be able to say that, that we have really come together. The relationships. I think we've built those relationships of trust and respect that make us able to come to the table and have those conversations, even though they're uncomfortable sometimes. And sometimes it's like, Mr. Lopez tells me, fix your face, because I'm like, this isn't working for me. So he doesn't say it like that. He just says, it looks like you have something to say. But I hear, fix your face. So we've known each other a long time. But those relationships, and so I'd say this year, even as challenging as it was, we came together. And yes, the salary packages, we did what we could. To really retain the people we have and be able to attract new folks that want to come in and love on our babies like all of us do. So I'm really proud of that work, and I'm proud that it's May. I'm proud and I'm happy that it's May. So thank you all for supporting all the work that we do. We can't do it alone. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone have a comment for Ms.? Okay. Thank you, Vanessa. Mr. Keith Brazier?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Take your time, take your time.
Yeah, no rush.
Good evening, President Alston, governing board members, Superintendent Dr. Gueston, leadership team, and community. ADA would like to highlight and recognize some happenings from April around town. On April 9th, past principals joined Eric Kemp to celebrate the Suns Diamondback Linda Brill Academy 20th anniversary luncheon. Then on April 22nd, Metro Tech officially received and celebrated the A+ School of Excellence Award, which identifies, celebrates, and recognizes educational excellence in schools throughout Arizona. In addition to showcasing exceptional public schools, the A+ program provides school teams with an outstanding comprehensive framework that serves as a basis for school assessment and planning. The A+ School of Excellence Award is a powerful energizer for increasing public confidence in recognized schools, often resulting in a greater parent and community involvement, and even serves as an economic driver for some communities. A+ schools are celebrated and recognized as exceptional. Earning the highly prestigious and coveted A+ designation spotlights the positive successes happening in public schools every day. And then our neighbors right here at Coding, on April 21st, through a partnership with Elevate Ed, Arizona, the education initiative of the Greater Phoenix Business Chamber, all Coding Academy students participated in a career awareness and hiring fair. The goal of the event was to provide company pathway information, conversation for students, to learn more about the organization and/or provide information on current openings for entry-level positions and internships. Students spent time talking with representatives from Honeywell, Copper State Credit Union, Common Spirit Health, Arizona Department of Public Safety, Ernst & Young, Knox Innovations, Pete King Construction, and many more. The event was successful, and they look forward to working with these companies to develop opportunities for Coding Academy and PXU students. Then over to Carl Hayden. Carl Hayden hosted a handball tournament. AP Martin Perez had a primer matchup with the favored Mrs. Misty Vilchis Lopez. The number 4 ranked player in the world, David Fink, visited campus and entertained 30 to 40 players. A big up to USHA certified instructor and Carl Hayden behavior intervention specialist, Chris Hogan, for nurturing such a vibrant program. And before I go, I'd like to thank the association president, Dr. Abram Coleman, and Vanessa Jimenez, and leadership team. Once again, super IBN work was done this year. Thanks for your support and leadership as well. We were able to move through a lot in a short amount of time. I think a record pace this year. Great collaboration in a room. Those two exhibit just a lot of passion and fervor and commitment to their staff and students, this whole PXU community. So it's been a great semester as far as that. And not only were we able to take care of a lot of staff, you know, we're heading into championship rounds right now. We're getting ready to move a lot of students across that stage in a couple of weeks. So it's just a really great time of the year, a lot to celebrate. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is for a call to the public. Presentations tonight are limited to a maximum of 2 minutes, according to ARS 38431.01H. At the conclusion of call to the public, members of the public body may respond to criticism made by those who address the public body, may ask the staff to review a matter, or may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, members may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noted for discussion and legal action. I would like to caution members of the audience about commenting on a particular individual and thank you for not referring to any person by name. Tonight, we have the option for members of the public to participate in person and virtually. We will start with our speakers who are present in the room, and there are several. Mr. Prescott, will you start us off?
Thank you, President Alston. Just a clarification from my point for staff. So I have 4 cards here, all 4 present here in theory. And then do we have additional speakers online?
Yes.
And will you all call those, or should I be prepared to call those as well?
President Alston, Clerk Prescott, on President's script are the names of the, I believe, 6 called to the public, so she'll take care of that part.
Great.
You just do in person.
Great, thank you so much. And on that note, John Buckhart, if you can please come to the podium and you can share your opinion for 2 minutes, and please follow the other rules that President Alston laid out, but thank you.
Hello. Thank you for the time tonight. My name is John Burkhardt. I'm a teacher at South Mountain High School, and I'm coming because we could use your help down there trying to make our campus a safer place. I do not feel we really have control of that campus all the time these days. I have students speaking to me on a regular basis that they are afraid to go to the bathroom on their own. I have students on a regular basis ask me when they get called up to the office or to counseling to be sent with a friend to escort them there and back. They don't feel safe. We have staff members who are now avoiding traveling across campus because to do so forces you into one of 2 options. You're going to have to address the behaviors that you're witnessing of students out on campus during class time, which is our instinct to do, to try and redirect them back to the room. If you do this, you will receive you'll either be ignored or you'll receive abusive and profane comments because they know, as we do, that we are rendered powerless if we do not know these students from our own classrooms. Your other option is to turn a blind eye and pretend that you don't see anything. And for those of us who deeply care, that is a very demoralizing thing to do. Our security staff has been reduced to only 3 individuals who are dedicated and amazing, but they cannot cover 50 acres. They simply can't do it. They run into the same situation of not being able to compel compliance with reasonable requests because they are essentially as powerless as we are. They also receive abusive language and at times are subjected to violence. We have amazing teachers who have left and continue to leave because of this situation. They're willing to go elsewhere and make significantly less money to get a better environment, and we have students being withdrawn by the hundreds, amazing students, because their parents do not feel that they were safe. So as you hear a report on campus safety and you consider handbook changes for next year, please make our safety a top priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Mallory Siddiqui, please come to the podium and share your comment. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, governing board members and Dr. Gaston. My name is Mallory Siddiqui, and I'm a certified teacher at the Academies of South Mountain. But more importantly, I am here as a representative of those teachers across the district that are frustrated and crying out for productive solutions to problems surrounding campus and student safety. I'm asking for the improvement of policy and procedural flaws that exist at the highest level, specifically attendance and tardy policies, hiring, and vagueness of the student handbook and code of conduct. Our district can be successfully data-driven in our decision-making. For example, policies and procedures in response to the COVID pandemic demonstrate how I know our district can take care of students and staff. However, please consider how you are collecting your data and responding to campus safety. Are you seeking information regarding student and staff safety from all experts? Are you coming to campuses and witnessing the issues firsthand? Are you dictating policies and procedures to teachers and administration, or are you actively collaborating? Are you talking to the parents withdrawing their children from campuses they feel are unsafe? Please understand, my intention is not to be accusatory or negative, but to remind those at the highest level of decision making that we, as teachers, are a part of the team for student success. Our shared experiences hold incredible value. The amount of human capital present in this district and in this room is precious. I ask you to ruminate on these questions and thoughts and be honest with yourself with what is taking place between all stakeholders involved in student success. We have an opportunity in the upcoming summer to proactively improve these issues previously stated. Within the letters I have passed out, we have handing, please keep in mind, right, those teachers are just interested in being a part of the solution. Governing board members, Dr. Gaston, I love teaching. I care about my students and my coworkers. I have great pride in the campus and surrounding community.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mallory. Lynn and Andrain, please come to the podium, and you can speak for up to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, President Alston, board members, Dr. Gaston, leadership, and the community. My name is Lennon Audrain, and I'm a Ward 4 resident. I'm very excited to see that Phoenix Union is supporting the early recruitment of teachers and training them with the Educator Preparatory Academy, because we know that 60% of teachers teach within 20 miles of where they went to high school. I participated in a program like this while I was in high school and became a teacher, and so I have a question about the program manager position, because I want to ensure that the students who are in this Educator Preparatory Academy have the same access to the connections and networks across Arizona and across the country that I did while I was in high school. And so to this end, I'm curious to know if and or how the program manager will collaborate with the Arizona Department of Education CTE Education and Training Program Specialist and other CTE education and training teachers across the district. Additionally, the job description did not require that the program manager have a CTE Education and Training certificate, which is a requirement to teach education and training courses in Arizona. And I think having a strong understanding not only of the certification process, but of the programmatic requirements for CTE will be immensely beneficial to this role. And so thank you for considering this, and thank you for all that you do for the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lyndon, for your comment. We cannot respond directly to the question now. Of course, when we get to that agenda item, I'm sure the board will have a longer discussion then, but thank you. Naritza Diaz-Cruz, can you please come to the podium and speak for your up to 2 minutes? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Naritza Diaz-Cruz, and I am a teacher at the academies at South Mountain. First of all, I want to say I love my district. I've been an educator for over 20 years. 14 of those have been at Phoenix Union. I was a first-year teacher in 2002 in this district. I want to talk because, so I'm currently a teacher at South, but I have a freshman at bioscience. And so I'm going to wear two hats. First, I'm going to talk as a mom and the issues that my colleagues have brought up about campus safety. As a mom, I have no concerns about my son whatsoever, none. I know that my kid goes to bio and he's going to be safe, he's going to be taken care of, that he has passionate teachers. No concern. Now, South has passionate teachers too. My concern is that as a mom, I want my students to have, their mothers to have the same feeling that their children are taken care of at South. We have very passionate people who are committed to their education. I want them to have the same safety as my son does at another campus. Now, talking as a teacher, I'm one of the teachers who is leaving South. For the first time in my whole career, I considered last semester leaving the profession, leaving the district. I was about to walk to Dr. Harwick at the time and drop off my keys and say, I'm coming for my refrigerator tomorrow. It was a colleague that talked me out of it and reminded me why I'm doing what I'm doing. Teachers who are leaving South is not because they don't love the campus. It's because we got tired. The 3 years that I've been at South, I've had 3 different principals. 3 in 3 years. I'm an ELD teacher, 3 different supervisors for ELD. We need help, and I hope that you hear us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And President, also, I'll turn it over to you for the folks who called in online.
Yes. Please state your name, indicate the agenda item or topic you wish to speak about, and limit your presentation to 2 minutes. Our first speaker is Michelle Ford. And it looks like Ms. Ford is not with us, after all. Our next speaker is Michael Mazzocco. No, Michael? Did we wear you out, guys? Our next speaker is Eric Frizzell. No. Oh, my heavens. Carrie Spiller, are you here? Yay. Thank you, Carrie. Please introduce yourself, and you will be on the timer for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Carrie Spiller, and I am currently a teacher at the Academies of South Mountain. I teach in the Law Magnet program, having retired from practicing major criminal defense, having represented clients charged with very serious criminal offenses. Prior to law school, I worked at the Department of Corrections, and I was a parole officer. So I'm no stranger to violent young people, serious crime incidents, drug sales, you name it. I felt more comfortable sitting next to convicted murderers and cartel drug dealers than I do walking across the campus where I currently work. I have not put in a resignation, but I have thought about it. The other law teacher at our school will not be returning next year for those reasons. As a defense attorney, the people that I sat next to were my clients and I knew them. At South, we don't know where the next thing is going to come from. There are fights daily. There are weapons brought to campus that we don't get notified until the next day. There's drugs being used daily in the bathrooms to such an extent we could smell it down the hallways and nobody does anything about it. Our campus has a revolving door. It's not secure. Kids can go to their cars, get whatever, come back. There's been other campuses where school shootings have happened in the middle of the school day. The district needs to follow the policies stated in the revised statutes that say that you shall consult with teachers and parents and prescribe rules that you can enforce, that you can work with teachers according to ARS 15843D. You shall support teachers in enforcing the rules, and those rules need to be clear in the handbook and enforceable, particularly related to crime and absenteeism from class that causes safety issues on campus. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is Bridget Sharp. Bridget, please introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening. My name is Bridget Sharp. I am the Arizona State Director for the Human Rights Campaign based here in Phoenix. And I'll be very brief. I just wanted to take a moment on behalf of the Human Rights Campaign to thank the governing board members for considering the adoption of the resolution to support transgender children and youth. As you know, this is a very scary time for parents and transgender youth. And, this show of support, this outward show of support means the absolute world to the community and to the students who you have as your students every single day. So I just wanted to, provide that insight and just thank you for putting this forward. We hope to see other districts adopt something similar. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Our last caller is Oscar de los Santos. Are you with us, Oscar?
President, am I back on? Sorry about that. President, also members of the board. He had to drop off, but he did send us a written message that we'll make sure gets to the board.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm here. If you could.
Oh, all right, he's back. There you go. He's back.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. My name is Oscar de los Santos. I'm a resident of Laveen, a former teacher, and a member of the LGBTQ community. I am just writing or calling in briefly to state my strong support for any and all policies that respect children for who they are, no matter what they look like or who they love. All people, especially all children, must be treated with dignity and respect, and particularly in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our call to the public. The next item is...
President Alston. Sorry. President Alston, I'd like to make a motion, if you don't mind. I would like to move item 8B ahead of item 5A so that we can go ahead and adopt that a little bit earlier. Item 8B being the adoption of the resolution in support of transgender children and youth.
Certainly.
Second.
Yeah, second that motion. There's community here.
Okay.
I think we should move it forward.
So I don't think we need a motion to move it up, but we'll take it.
Yeah, it's at your discretion. You can just jump into 8B if you'd like.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, that's what I thought. Okay, at your request, Mr. Stanford, we are happy to honor your request.
Thank you.
And the next item is 8B, adoption of resolution in support of transgender children and youth. Dr. Gessler.
President Alston, members of the board, excited to bring this to the board tonight. The board at the last board meeting asked us to work with you all and our broader community to bring to the board meeting a resolution in support of our trans students and families and children. And this is, of course, as part of the resolution is connected to a Senate bill that we believe sent the wrong message and was contrary to the values of Phoenix Union. And so tonight, it's your opportunity to discuss and consider this really strong value statement.
Okay, Mr. Prescott.
I would like to motion to approve the resolution as drafted.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Prescott, who was my second, Ms. Parra. A motion to adopt has been made by Mr. Prescott and seconded by Ms. Parra. On the motion, those in favor?
Madam President, can we make a quick comment, please?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
On the
That's
motion.
okay. We're on a roll
Any
here now.
discussion? I missed that part.
No problem.
Mr. Gallardo.
Thank you, Madam President, and I appreciate the district working on this particular motion. I believe it was Board Member Marquez that recommended that we have a resolution, and I appreciated that as well. I am a member of the LGBT community, and I'm very familiar with the legislative process. I'm also a high school baseball coach. I coach high school and the little ones, 13-year-olds. I know the process, and I know the folks that were pushing this particular legislative bill. I have fought with these guys, or I shouldn't say these guys, this organization, when I was there at the state legislature on a number of bills that they pushed. Many of the bills and policies that they push, I always referred to as the 1950s, Leave It to Beaver, back in the 50s public policy. I mean, it's just out of mainstream Arizona and what we need in today's policies. This is the same organization when I was there, helped and fought very hard to kill the anti-bullying bill. They didn't feel that it was the right public policy, and they helped kill it. I think you were there, Madam President, as well. This organization continues to push policies that I will be blunt and call it nothing but hate. That's all it is about. They'll mask around as people of faith, but they'll continue to push bills that just negatively impact communities, negatively impact young people. It's just an organization to me that is just out of step with mainstream Arizonans and families. This particular bill targeted the trans community. And I keep asking myself, I keep thinking, who's asking for this bill? I'm a baseball coach. I'm familiar with many coaches throughout the community, many right here in Phoenix Union. I don't know one coach, one parent, one player that is asking for this type of policy. Who's asking for it? Why is it being pushed in the legislature? Why is it so important? It's their beliefs. To me, it's hate. That's what it's about. I'll be blunt, let's be honest. That's what this organization pushes. This particular bill targets a community that is more likely to experience anxiety, depression. They're the greater risk of falling into substance abuse, homelessness. They're at the highest risk of suicide. This is the community in which they're targeting. Instead of sitting around and saying, well, how can I help this trans community? How can I help kids right now that are dealing with who they are? Something so personal. How can we help them? They intend go right after them and try to hurt them and attack the trans community. Many of these kids fear rejection, not only by their schoolmates, but by family. They experience a hostile environment, and they're just trying to live life. They are. That's who they're targeting. So when I see bills like this, it just reminds me of all the different attacks that this organization has made over the many years. And they hide behind religious faith. That's what they do. And it's unfortunate that it is a community that should be protected. We should be trying to understand or get to know the kids, trying to build relationships, instead of trying to disenfranchise and trying to make them a political statement, because that's exactly what happened. They passed the bill and they used it to raise money on the backs of many of these kids that are right now walking our community, our schools, and they're looking for help. They're looking for love. They're looking for friendship. They're looking for someone just to hold them and say, it is okay, everything will be all right. Yet this organization will use this bill to raise money off this particular issue. Madam President, I am more disgusted over this bill than probably any other, because we're targeting kids. Like I said, I'm a baseball coach. I know coaches. I know baseball players. I know community. No one's asking for this bill. No one thinks this is an issue. Instead of, like I said, focusing on the real issues right now and the concerns facing the trans community, they're being attacked. And that's exactly what this bill does. I appreciate, Madam President, having it on our agenda, and I look forward to voting yes on the resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Gallardo. Ms. Ross?
So first, Steve, thank you, your passion. Thank you for speaking up. I just wanted to add one tiny little thing. I agree with everything you said. I just wanted to add one tiny little thing. Black trans women have a much too high rate of assault and murder. That was all. I just wanted to add that in because that wasn't added in. But everything you said, I agree with.
Mr. Prescott?
Thank you, President Alston. And I also want to give a thank you to Board Member Marquez for bringing up this issue and helping draft the resolution, getting it here on our agenda tonight. So I announced recently that I'm not running for re-election. Of course, when you do that, you reflect on everything you've done in the previous years. And so I started on the board in 2015, and one of the first things we did at that time is we expanded our equal opportunity policies. We had protections for sexual orientation for employees and students, but we did not have protections at that time for gender identity and gender expression. And so we added them. We were one of the only school districts in Arizona to do so at that time. And when I think back at some of the most memorable and meaningful moments for me as a board member, it was actually at that time. I had employees come up to me and share that because we had passed this resolution, they had the confidence to come out knowing that their rights would be respected. We had students who also shared the same, that they were now confident to come out because their rights were being respected. And since then, we've done a lot and progressively built on that. And so when I saw this legislation come back to the Capitol, I was very frustrated and disappointed because it felt like rehashing of old bills and old ideas, as Board Member Gallardo put it. And I think the ultimate consequence for this legislation is that there will be students who feel less confident in themselves, that feel less respected, that feel like their rights aren't being heard to fully express their identities and themselves. And that's not right. And so I'm very glad that we're able to put forward this resolution. One other thing that's been true the past few years is Phoenix Union has led the way. When these types of injustices occur, we're the first to put out a resolution. We're the first to craft local policy to address these issues. And so I'm glad that we're doing that once again. I think as these issues continue to go, as there might be more legislation in the future, or as this particular legislation continues to be implemented, I look forward to working with my colleagues to continue to lead the way and protect the rights of all of our students. I'm gonna paraphrase Dr. King, and I apologize in advance because I didn't look up the quote before to make sure I got it right. But to paraphrase, the arc of history, is long, but it bends towards justice. And so, although a lot of these struggles for equal rights for LGBT people as well as other marginalized groups have been long, we'll get there, and we'll continue to have equal rights for all. So, thank you.
Ms. Parra?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate Member Marquez bringing this forward, so thank you for that. I just want to quickly acknowledge that our mission statement and our brand says that we are schools of opportunity that welcome, love, and inspire all students to go places and do things that matter. And when we say all kids at Phoenix Union, we mean all kids, and including the LGBTQ community and the trans community, and we are unapologetic about that. We will continue to be unapologetic about that. So when kids do not feel welcome in any school, they need to know that at Phoenix Union you will find a home. You will find a place where you are safe, where you are loved, where you are respected and honored and appreciated, and we will invest in you.
Thank you, Ms. Parra. Mr. Marquez?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to thank the board for supporting this, and each of your comments tonight. Supervisor Gallardo, thank you. Board Member Parra, thank you for your leadership at Stanford's leadership, and Senator Alston's leadership, for the years before I was able to join the board, leading on these issues in the past. Board Member Ross, I think your comment especially was important. I appreciate you adding that. I want to also thank Dr. Gueston and executive team staff, and specifically legal counsel Eileen Fernandez, for working very hard on this resolution. I've only been on this board for about 1.5 years now, and I've been proud to be part of this board tonight, and I was proud to be part of the board when we stood up against the legislature at the beginning of last school year when they said it was we couldn't follow science. So I hope tonight is another example that other districts will follow, and we can start with a resolution, but really the goal is to push back and call on the governor to repeal this horrible legislation.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you who support this resolution. Being at the legislature is harder every single day, and it gets meaner and meaner and meaner. It's a very difficult place to be, but it's rewarding to be here with this group of people and that group of people, this very wonderful community who does support and love all of our kids. And, there's some legislation about parental rights that's been signed by the governor that could cause great difficulty in not sharing certain information that traditionally kids have shared with their teachers. And so, I'm fearful, but I guess the word is comforted that we have this progressive board here leading the way for other school boards throughout our community and our state. I hear it all the time. I'm sure you do too. Phoenix Union gave us the courage to do what you did and what you led with. And so thank you, my fellow board members, our teachers, our staff, and our community, our larger community, for being supportive of all of our kids, whatever their sexual orientation, their economic situation, whatever it is, we love them all. And it's because we have the support of the community that allows us to be that way. So thank you. Now I have to find my motion. So I flipped around my pages here. Okay. Any further comments? Okay. A motion to adopt has been made by Mr. Prescott and seconded by Ms. Parra. On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? With a resounding aye, the motion passes. Thank all of you. Okay, now, Mr. Prescott, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented, and is there a second?
I suppose I should take responsibility for it after moving around the agenda. Yes, I move to adopt the consent agenda, item 5A.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Prescott, seconded by Ms. Ross. On the motion, is there any discussion of the consent agenda? On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. The next item is 6A, the superintendent's report. Dr. Guston, please provide your report at this time.
Hi, President Alston, members of the board, I'm going to share just a few slides tonight, and then I want to introduce you to some of our students, the class of 2022. But I do want to highlight a couple of things on our consent agenda. First of all, on travel, we have several of our students, about 40 of our students, that are going to get to travel to Washington, D.C. on the Arizona Cardinals airplane.
Wow.
Along with other students in Arizona going to experience Washington, D.C. firsthand. And so the board approved that tonight on consent agenda. Speaking of travel, we, on consent agenda as well, board approved in many ways the return of foreign exchange programs in Phoenix Union. Because of COVID, we stopped foreign exchange programs, and this allows us to move forward if spread of COVID continues to move in the right direction, that we would be able to re-engage in foreign exchange programs. And then also one other item to note is Principal Keone Dang at Wilson College Prep has an incredible opportunity to move back home to Washington State, where he and his wife are from and all their family, and so wanted to thank Mr. Dang for his service. As you also heard from Dr. Coleman and others tonight, it is Staff and Teacher Appreciation Week. It was Teacher Appreciation Day. In Phoenix Union, we celebrate all of our employees. It's also Nurses Month. And you do see that picture. One final shout out to Kareem Neal. He and I had a chance to actually film together the Teacher Appreciation, Staff Appreciation video on Maryville's football field, and unsurprisingly, he brought his students with him. And so we had a chance to, and his entire staff as well. And so we had a chance to film with his beautiful students and staff as the backdrop on the Maryville football field. So thank you again, Mr. Neal. And of course, I just want to remind ourselves, Phoenix Union has nearly 4,000 employees, education support professionals, certified staff in the classroom, certified staff out of the classroom, and administrators. And as you heard from the podium tonight from our association presidents, we're tired, but did this work collectively together this year, and are very proud of our people. Tonight, Eileen Fernandez gets a rare night off to speak around redistricting. So just want to remind board where we're at. Tonight is an important next step. You approved the minutes. That triggers the next step in the process, so we will now be able to submit all of our paperwork to the Department of Justice. They have 60 days to review. If they approve it, then we will be able to submit that to the county and hopefully move forward, and the maps will be in place by January 1st. If for some reason the Department of Justice doesn't like our maps, then they will tell us in the next 60 days, and you'll have a chance to talk about maps again if that's the case. Let's hope that's not true. So thank you again to everyone involved in the redistricting process. I will be brief on the slide because I know that, and I'm assuming President Alston would like to comment on this later, but President Alston and I had a chance to go to the Roosevelt School District last week or the week before. The governing board approved a resolution a month ago in support of a college promise where a local family foundation, the Rotsotsi Family Foundation, gave out free college to an entire class of third graders. And so long as they can stay on track, by the time they get to college, college is free, and I'll allow President to maybe share a couple comments at the end of my report, because I think we agreed it was one of the greatest events we had an opportunity to do. And then finally tonight, keep in mind my presentation report, because I want you to meet a couple more students. We've shared a couple of videos over the last couple of months. Our marketing team is profiling students from all across the district, class of 2022, and you see the beautiful faces, diversity in every way. We've had a chance to share a couple. This is the last time we will meet before the class of 2022 graduates. Graduations are a couple weeks, and so we put together a quick collage of a few of our students, and I just thought it was important for us to take 5 or 6 minutes just to reacquaint ourselves with some incredible students in Phoenix Union.
Es de las personas más importantes que tengo. Y hablando sobre mi madre, hace unos años empezó a tener un problema con tiroides, hipertiroiditis me parece que es el nombre, y pues en sí pues empezó a tener problemas con su peso, con su respiración, ataque de ansiedad, cosas que pues hicieron que yo me fuera a México a tomar cuidado de ella. Cuando volví a México, volví a la ciudad en la que crecí, en la que me crié. Volví a Nuevo Casas Grandes, Chihuahua, México. Y sentí la responsabilidad de volver a México y cuidar de ella durante 2 años mismos, por los cuales pues, no estuve estudiando aquí, me atrasé en mis estudios. Yo llegué siendo un senior a esta escuela. Llegué con falta de créditos, me faltaban una cantidad de créditos para graduarme, y fue la principal razón por la cual yo me metí a esta escuela. Fue una escuela que me ayudó a seguir con mis estudios, aún así ya teniendo mis 20 años, que por lo general en escuelas, en otras high schools, el límite es hasta los 18, so esta escuela me recibió con las manos abiertas. Cuando ya tenga mi diploma, que lo tenga en mano, voy a ir a la oficina de Army National Guard a entregarles mi documento y a terminar completamente mi papeleo. Hace unas semanas I was sworn in para el Army National Guard. Fue uno de los pasos más importantes que yo creo que van a dar margen a mi futuro. Siempre he dicho desde que tenía 14, 15 años, ser parte del Army es algo que yo quiero, que algo que me va a dar frutos, que me va a preparar para lo que viene en la vida, y siento que estoy tomando los pasos correctos en mi vida.
Like, besides like my academic struggles, one of the biggest things was my cultural background. Going into high school, I was kind of unsure about the person I wanted to be regarding like my Vietnamese culture. So I kind of repressed that, like as a lot of like, people of color do. But once I got into high school and I realized all the different people around me, I kind of felt like, oh, I was more comfortable being myself. And I realized that I didn't want to suppress like my Vietnamese background. And I joined a lot of culture groups, even though there wasn't like a Vietnamese one. Being around other people and learning about other culture made it more comfortable for me to learn about my own. So that was like something that I really overcome, because I grew to, love being Vietnamese. I've had such a good relationship with a lot of my teachers, and I knew that I wasn't afraid to go and ask for help. And I've gotten opportunities from these teachers where, as if they were like a lot more intimidating, I would have not have like gotten to do all the things that I was able to do. My parents are proud of me, I'd say. I don't know, my parents are the type of people who don't really show their affection too much, but I think they've seen like when I come home and I tell them about like, oh, this accomplishment I made, they're proud of me, and like they want to know that like I feel good with my journey here. The next step is I will be attending a college. I don't know which for sure yet, but I will be studying something in business. I did apply with like economics as my major in mind. However, I'm still iffy about that, but I still want to stay in the business realm. So I hope to go and attend a college or university that I feel like comfortable for me.
Beginning of my freshman year, my mom was diagnosed with colon cancer for the second time. And well, she had to go through surgery, and my little sister was just a baby, so I had to miss school to help with my mom and my baby sister. My little sister's father actually kicked us out for the first time. And well, we were practically living in our van for like a couple weeks, and we would crash at my mom's friend's house here and there. And while that went on, we got our an apartment, but it was like mainly getting evicted from one apartment to another, and it's kind of hard from, you know, going to school and also trying to help my mom with the bills and my sister. I've missed a lot of credits my freshman and my sophomore year, and the fact that I'm able to graduate on time and with this year makes me really proud of myself, and I'm just happy to be finished with school in general. After graduation, I'm thinking of going with my brother-in-law to go learn how to paint cars, work on cars. Just always know that you're not alone, even if you're not with your parents or not with your family. Just strive to be successful for them and for yourself.
Well, I'd say the transfer. At that time, I didn't know where I was going to go, and it was just hard because I only got 1 year of football to pretty much show what I had as far as talent-wise and school-wise. I mean, school-wise, it's always been there, but if anything, when I was at Cedar Chavez, I took some really hard classes, and managing that with football, it was kind of hard to keep both, and whether I should be doing this or making sure this is more important. But when I came to Trevor Brown, I've created a really good relationship with all my teachers. So it's just, if I needed a couple more days for an assignment, maybe a Sunday or something like that, communicated with them. Communication was key, and that just bettered my relationship with all my teachers. Got a lot of money in scholarship. It's about over $2 million. I talked to Ms. Purvis about it, and thinking about it, it's like, wow. You know, I did get a lot of acceptance from a lot of schools, different schools in Wisconsin and Iowa and Oregon and Pennsylvania and stuff like that. But man, when my parents heard that number, they're like, whoa, like that's possible? You know, they're just really excited for me and really happy. Like in my MBA in business administration or management, don't know yet, but still looking and have plenty of time to figure it out. It's crazy to believe that I'm gonna be graduating 4 years ago. I'm like, man, what's my dream to be? And you know, committed to Willamette University. I think that was the best decision for me. Had a lot of interest from schools, had 14 offers from a lot of Division III and NIA schools. And I'm just happy to be over there represent, because it's so beautiful out there. It's a lot of green. I'm just looking forward to it. It's gonna be something new, a different experience, and I'm ready for the challenge.
President Alston, again, as you just thought it was important for us to reacquaint ourselves with our students. We have incredible stories, and want to thank again our marketing team for the incredible work they did helping us tell the stories of our students. And that concludes my report.
And thank you very much. The next item is 7A, presentation and discussion of the Arizona State Retirement System contribution pre-funding. Dr. Gaston.
Great. President, also members of the board, from a timing perspective, I have great news. We're not doing this presentation tonight. We, as you know, board, from previous meetings, there was a possibility that Phoenix Union was going to get to take advantage of a retirement pre-funding program to reduce some of our annual costs, but because of change in legislation and change in interest rates, this is no longer a viable option, and if it is, we will bring it back, but officially would like to table this item potentially for a future agenda.
Okay. The next item is 7B, presentation and discussion of the Student Code of Conduct, Discipline Data, and Law Enforcement Usage. Dr. Gaston.
All right, President Alston and members of the board and the community, tonight, this is the only presentation of the night. We're going to dig deep as we do annually. This is our annual discipline data, Student Code of Conduct, law enforcement. As you know, Phoenix Union's been, as every district, on a journey to really get clear about safety procedures and protocols, the policies, the code of conduct. But every year it's important that we hold ourselves accountable publicly for what the data looks like. What you will see tonight from Alyssa Tarkington, our Executive Director for Student and Family Services, and Mr. Claudio Correa, who next year will serve as our Executive Director for Safety. This year serves in a director role overseeing student code of conduct and campus safety in many ways. They will present tonight on the topics that you see on your agenda. You'll get a high-level look at student discipline, what that looks like across Phoenix Union. Then we'll take a look at disproportionality. And then new this year, you'll get an in-depth look at what student interventions look like in that process. And then tonight, as you'll hear from Alyssa, board will send you home with the proposed or a draft student handbook for next year, which includes the code of conduct. And so Alyssa will give you a glimpse into the code of conduct for next year. And then Mr. Correa will tackle an ongoing challenging topic here in Phoenix Union, which is law enforcement, and will show the board where we're at with law enforcement notifications, arrests, and some potential next steps on law enforcement models into the future. So I do want to thank Ms. Tarkington and Mr. Correa. This is always a challenging topic for us to cover in Phoenix Union. It's one the board typically leans into really hard. They should, which is fine, but I also just want to honor the work that you two are doing. It's tough work day to day, and it's tough work to sit up here tonight and talk about data and answer tough questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Tarkington and Mr. Correa, and we will hand you the remote to make your life a little easier. Ms. Tarkington.
Thank you, Dr. Geston. Good evening, President Alston, governing board members, leadership team, and PXU community. Again, I also want to say thank you. I'm proud to work in Phoenix Union, and I am proud that we have a governing board that cares a great deal about our students, asks the hard questions, guides us in policies, and it is all about collaboration. And acknowledging also some of the conversations that have come up even tonight in public comment and often come up in the work that we do together throughout our organization. And with that said, we'll dive right in. Next slide, please. Oh, maybe I have a clicker now. Okay. So as I get started, I want to just make sure that the community knows and just remind the governing board that we'll be covering information for this school year through the third quarter. Obviously, we're still in school through the fourth quarter, and we'll have that summative information later. And then we'll also look at some comparisons over the last few school years. And so I'll dive right in. And so, again, this slide really represents the percentage of students who've had any kind of discipline infraction this year. And so at the bottom, drawing your attention to the current school year through the third quarter, 7.6% of our students had some level of discipline. From a number standpoint, we, as our enrollment can fluctuate at times. We were looking at really about just over 32,000 students. And so that's, approximately, 2,000 or almost 2,500 incidents of discipline. When we go back to the 2018-2019 school year, we chose 4 years because that was the last time we were in person for 4 full quarters. And so you'll see that in many instances we're much lower than the 2018-19 school year and more closely resemble the 2019-2020 school year, in which we had 3 years of in-person learning and then the pandemic hit and 1 quarter virtual. And then last year you'll see very low numbers as we had 3 quarters of virtual learning with some safe spaces for students on campus, and then about 1/3 of our students returned in the 4th quarter. So just keep that in mind as we go throughout the presentation. Oops, wrong way here. And so here we break down our percentage of discipline by school. Paying attention again to that green line was the first 3 quarters of this year and runs pretty closely or just under what we saw in 2019-2020. And hope that as we get to that finish line, the goal is always to reduce the discipline. Helping our students make good decisions and really helping them learn and change behavior as they do make mistakes. You'll see some peaks here and there that are a little bit larger than others. That's frequently at some of our support schools and alternative programming where we have more wraparound services and focus on some of the behaviors that are challenging for our students. Next, you'll see our percentage of students that had some kind of skill building in school suspension. And the reason we call that skill building is that as we really started working towards some restorative practices, but also intervention-based behavior change and consequences. We typically, that is where we'll have an opportunity to do some of our skill building, and whether they're meeting with one of our prevention specialists or social workers or working through even an online module of some sort, that's why we call it the skill building. And so you'll see that that's a very small percentage of our students, 2.2%, which equates to roughly 700 students. And again, closely, or just under the 2019-2020 school year, and again, looking much lower than the 2018-2019 school year. Here we have the percentage of students with major behavior incidents, and we'll have a list of that on the next slide. Higher than the in-school suspension. These are our more serious behaviors and decisions that students make at 4.6%, and I'll just let you glance at the table. And then here is a list of what we typically consider a major behavior incident. And then as we move along, these are going to be those behaviors that result typically in an off-school or out-of-school suspension. And you'll see that the percentage for off-campus suspension is very closely related to those major behavior incidents at 4.5%, which is roughly 1,500 students who've had one of those major incidents or behaviors on campus. And then again, showing by campus, you'll see again that green line is just under, in some cases aligned to the 2019-2020 school year, and looking closer or lower than the 2018-2019 school year. And then I think it's important for us to unpack some of the behaviors. On this slide, you'll see those major behaviors broken down by count, this time looking at the orange bar for the 21-22 school year. And I think what I'll point out is that, when you look, across all of the years, you'll see that substances tend to be the most frequent of those behaviors. But then you'll also see lower down the table fights and assaults, and often, in the code they're combined, some of our more violent or aggressive behaviors. And then we've had lots of dialogue in the past about substances, and so just breaking down what that means, our different categories. And again, you'll see that you might note that it's a lot lower than the 2018-19 school year, which I'm not sure if you ask sometimes campus or security if they see that, and we're not really sure how to unpack the reason for that. It might be the changes in laws and access, but we don't, it's hard to unpack that. I'm not sure how much we can do that, but just wanted you all to have an opportunity to see that breakdown over the past 4 school years. And so as I want to pause just for a moment as we move into the next 3 slides. And I think that this is often the slide that allows for the most dialogue and conversation. And so for our community and for our governing board, just as a reminder, when we break down student discipline by demographics, what we're really looking at is disproportionate discipline. And so I'm just going to take a moment just to remind how we take a look at this chart, and again for our community as well. And so as we look across both the table and the graph, we have our student enrollment broken down by demographic. And so what our yellow bar represents is the percent of students enrolled in Phoenix Union. The purple line represents the percent of, on this particular slide, is the in-school suspension. And so we'll start on the far left. We have our Hispanic females, and then we have our Hispanic males. And so what you'll see again is when that line is lower than the bar, that looks like it's an underrepresentation of the student population who received that in-school suspension. And when it's above the bar, that would be an overrepresentation. So in this case, Hispanic females make up 38. My eyes get a little blurry here, 38.9% of our Phoenix Union enrollment, but they were 20.5% of the students who received ISS. And so again, with Hispanic males, 41.4% of our population, but 49.8% of the in-school suspension. And so as you can clearly see as we move down that line where it is above or quite a bit above that percentage, though that's disproportionate or overrepresentation of discipline.
Just, will you just really, so AIF is?
American Indian female.
Thank you.
We typically say Native American. I think that's part of the categorization that Arizona Department of Education has. And so when you upload enrollment data, that's how that is categorized. Group. And so as I move to the next 2 slides, you'll see some similar trends. And so this slide represents, again, those major behavior incident categories. And then you'll see the off-campus suspension. And so I want to take a few minutes to talk about the behaviors and slides, and certainly give time for conversation. And so I think I'll pause before I go to the slide. So I think I'll spend a little bit of time on major behavior incidents and on the off-campus suspension. And so we've talked about this as an executive team. We talk about this in our admin meetings with support teams. And I think there's a couple things when we talk about disproportionate discipline that we've got to think about. So there's the behavior itself, right? There's the decision that a student makes. And so in many ways, the behavior is the behavior. I think that how we identify the behavior sometimes can be inconsistent. And so an example, and this is just, I'm just going to use demographics. So if we have 5 males walk into the bathroom, or maybe 5 Hispanic males or 5 Black males walk into the bathroom together, it may look suspicious to a staff member. And so that staff member may come in after, and then we catch our students vaping. If you had 5 Hispanic females walk into the bathroom, or American Indian, or even black females, a staff member may not. That is not always the case. I am not insinuating anything about our staff not loving students. We all have to understand that we have unconscious bias. And so again, the behavior is the behavior. It's that identifying the behavior may not always be consistent. I'm also not alluding to the public that everybody's going into the bathroom smoking. The other piece of it then is the assigning of discipline. And so again, my colleague Claudio here has been in the position in our division this year that's working with our administrators in terms of discipline. And so are we assigning that discipline consistently? I think we heard at the podium tonight some thoughts that maybe the code of conduct seems vague. And so we do spend time in that dialogue and talking about the assigning of discipline. And so I think that as we continue to work through these items, these are the kinds of things that we discuss. It's not always comfortable. I think that we try to set up safe spaces that it's not accusatory. I think that the idea is that we have to start to figure this out because we can't just admire the problem each year when we come to you. And so before I pause, I just want to talk about a few items. I won't read every one to you, but try to capture some of the work. And so I will start with the top. The Student Success Coordinator position is a position that you all approved last school year. That's part of a larger restructure, so to speak, of some of our Title I funds. And so these are TOA positions, teacher on assignment positions. The Student Success Coordinator was designed to support student behavior, to wrap around students. The goal is one day to have even ratios on a campus of multiple Student Success Coordinators based on population. Just like the Ed Mentor position is to wrap around teachers as that teacher coach and mentor working with teachers on professional practices, as well as our freshman house coordinators who are wrapping around freshman teachers and freshman houses and analyzing data. And so that is a position that we implemented this year. Unfortunately, only about half of our campuses got filled and we had vacancies this year. And so really working to get through that process to identify those teachers that have that passion in this work. Excuse me. And so those that were there have been a part of seminars along with social workers and prevention specialists with our assistant principals who work on discipline with Claudio this year. They've done seminars on best practice sharing and really trying to look at the data on a quarterly basis to say, okay, so now what are we going to do to intervene? When I get to the intervention portion, I'll talk about some of those examples, or we can talk now. I think the other part that I'm really proud of is that Claudio also brought a group together this year to study specifically the African American or Black disproportionate discipline. And so that's consisted of representatives from ESS, administrators, student success coordinators, and some of the other support team members who are really not only looking at and unpacking the data, but doing some research on best practices to really take a look at, how do we address this? And so it becomes twofold. It's the adult aspect of disproportionality, and again, some of those items talked about addressing, but also that student prevention side of the house. And so I'll, just looking for other ideas as well, and can pause.
Can we
if
have the
needed.
other slide back up, please?
Yes.
Yep.
The off-campus.
You want to go? Okay, thank you. Matt?
Yes,
Okay.
Ms. Ross.
Okay. So several things. I've been on the board this is my 4th year. And every year we get this report. And I'm so saddened that I don't see major, and not you. Let me back up. First of all, good job to you two. Because unfortunately you have that role of presenting to us. And so when I'm speaking, I'm not saying you all are doing anything wrong. Clear, okay? We're good? All right. It makes me sad to see that these numbers haven't changed drastically in the 4 year, or very much in the 4 years I've been here. We're still disproportionately suspending our black and brown kids. We still have educators who are afraid of black and brown kids, educators who don't deal with their implicit biases and saying, I don't feel safe. And so it makes me sad. Now, granted, I'm not on a campus every day, but I work with children in my everyday life. I work with teenagers in my everyday life. Very similar population to our Phoenix Union population. And there are lots of different things that these kiddos do, and rarely will you hear me say, I don't feel safe. I feel like those are strong words to say, and it makes me concerned, because what message are we sending to children if we're saying, I don't feel safe around you? For me, those statements perpetuate the school to prison pipeline. So I think several things can happen. I think that as a district, we could improve upon working with our adults who work with children on digging through their own implicit biases, so that we can start getting these numbers to be less skewed. The other thing that makes me very uncomfortable is when I hear adults wanting to be very punitive toward children, because first and foremost, they're children. We're here to love on them and support them. And it's interesting because as a society, it seems that we still haven't, not all of us, but there are some of us who haven't learned yet that our punitive criminal justice system doesn't work. That's why it's crowded, because it doesn't work. If it worked, it wouldn't be crowded. And so when I hear statements of, I don't feel safe, that sends alarm bells to me. And when I hear adults saying they want to be harder or more strict on children, instead of what can we do to come up with different ways to address our kids' needs, because at the core of all of this, our kids have unmet needs. And as a person who works in this space, in my professional life outside of the school board, I struggle with adults who don't understand that we need to meet these children where they are and understand that there is some kind of unmet need that's happening in their lives outside of school, and unfortunately that spills over into school. But to then try to demonize and criminalize children frustrates me. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Parra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so we spoke earlier, and I appreciate your guys' time, and I really thank you for pulling all of this together. And I just want to first off acknowledge the fact that when I joined the board, like we actually pushed for this to have this done, because we had never published our discipline data before Member Prescott and I joined the board. And so it was one thing that we've worked on to make it clear to the public that we are committed as a district to get better. And I know that Dr. Guestin and our leadership team are incredibly committed, and all of our employees are incredibly committed to addressing these issues, because the data does demonstrate that we are disproportionately disciplining, in particular, our black and brown boys. And I think we have to dig a little deeper into the data and start to look at addressing the root cause of what is actually causing these behaviors, right? And so, like, how are we unpacking that, and more importantly, like, how are we giving our adults and our employees the tools to do that well? And so also heard that a campus doesn't have enough security personnel, and I've heard from security personnel that they are understaffed and overwhelmed, right? And so, like, when we're thinking about solutions, we have to think about the capacity of our employees and how much we're asking them to do, and what supports and tools are we kind of putting in their tool belts to address these issues. So I would say, like pull them together, and I think you already do, right? Like, have them lead and drive and they're on the ground. So I think the people that are closest to the work should help guide us and help us make better informed decisions. But the goal here and the whole reason why we started to publish this discipline data is to reduce those numbers and to reduce the disproportionality behind it. And so we're not there yet. You know, we have a lot of work to do, but one thing I just want to say is, like, I don't know that many districts do this. A lot of districts would prefer to keep this data under the rug and not let the community know that they have these challenges. And so I just want to acknowledge the fact that we are putting it out there, because putting it out there means that what gets presented is what gets addressed. It's how we solve challenges in our system. And so, like, yes, it can be disheartening. Yes, we know this is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have and that we face, and now more than ever, right? Post-pandemic time. Our kids need a lot. Our employees need a lot of support. But I think that we have to start really thinking outside of the box and bringing our folks to the table, bring parents to the table. When we talk about accountability, families have to help us on this work, right? Like, how are we locking arms? I work with parents and families every single day. My team works with parents and families every single day. And they want to help. They want to support our educators. So, like, how are we locking arms with our parents and families and, like, becoming a real team that supports their kids? How are we building and strengthening those relationships with our parents? And then the other thing is, like, when we talk about, Mr. Neal mentioned, you know, like, the issues with being an educator and the retention issues that we have and that we're going to face. So I think, you know, we also have to think about our talent pipeline. To address this, we have to think about how we recruit and hire talent into Phoenix Union. There's a growing body of research that tells us that when educators look like the students that they serve, and when they live in the communities that they serve, kids attend school at higher rates, the discipline issues are reduced, and their academic achievement goes up. And I know that right now, like, we have probably pockets of employees that look like our community a little bit more than other pockets of our employees. So, like, what are we doing when we think about talent and recruitment to make sure that we are building a pipeline that lives in our community, that looks like our community? Because at the end of the day, again, going back to that brand promise, we have a commitment that we have made to the Phoenix Union community that we are going to invest and love every single child that walks through our doors, regardless of what they're, regardless of what they're going through. But we have to also make sure that our campuses stay safe. And safety has to be part of the conversation. We cannot compromise the safety of thousands of lives. And so that has to be part of the solution. And I think that we need our employees to help us guide that work. Like, I know I will never tell you that I have all the answers, because I don't. I think it's important to bring the people that are on the ground to the table to help us brainstorm and to think outside of the box. But my only ask is that the goal is we have to change that. It's going to take some time, but that has to change. So how are we doing that collectively, collaboratively, creatively, and making sure that our colleagues in this work, our employees in this work feel supported? That, to me, is absolutely critical. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Prescott.
Thank you to both of you for presenting on this tonight. As a couple board members have mentioned, this isn't the easiest presentation. This is probably the toughest presentation of the year. So thank you. I have a full page of comments and questions, but I'm not going to do them all right now. I just want to ask on the data. So the one thing that stood out to me when I reviewed this earlier this week, and especially given the discussion tonight, is we've heard at several board meetings that this has been a tough year, right? And the consensus that I've heard from district employees is that this has been a tough year. Coming back from COVID, that there's been a lot of discipline incidents, there's been a lot of behavior incidents. We heard that at the podium tonight, that there are continued discipline incidents on those campuses. But then, of course, now we're only 3/4 of the way through the year in the data presented here, but it looks like we're on track for a year that's not that different from the past couple of years before the pandemic. And so in my head, I'm trying to reconcile the fact that we're hearing that this is a tough year with more incidents than ever, with the fact that we have, data that shows that it's not that different than it was a couple of years back. And so, do you, I guess, what's your opinion and your take on that?
Ask Claudia if you wanted to start. Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Gustin, and community. So yeah, I guess when we do look at the data, I mean, if you don't mind, I'll just flip back a little bit here, to take a look at this. So I think a couple things. So I think when we, again, listen to our colleagues when we're fielding calls during the day, at night events, on the weekends, I think the intensity of some of the incidents that we've had, so there's frequency and there's intensity. And so it's a continuum. And so when I look at fights, I mean, we're not done yet. That was through third quarter, combined with assaults. I always say a fight isn't a fight, isn't it a fight, right? A fight doesn't tell me the story. There was a fight today. Oh, okay. Tell me about that. And so I think that's part of it. I think that, when I go over what I'm going to talk about, the numbers are smaller, but I mean, weapons matter. We know that. And so, and then we also were at home for nearly 2 years. And so some of it might even be just it's the level of stress. When I get to the intervention slides, and I know you all were privy to data prior to being here, but when you're talking about hundreds of males and females having referrals for mental health or social emotional in a world that still very much stereotypes that, men don't deal with mental health, we know that's not true. And so I think that even if the numbers look smaller, I think just the state of affairs of the adjustment, acclimating back to the campus, I think if I, share candidly some of the conversations, again, we have, I spend more of my time in admin meetings than necessarily other meetings, and that's not great. I need to, be in lots of different groups, and also with the security collaborative, we spent a lot of time this year, is that there were things that we had down at the start of the year. And I think the level of reteaching that we needed to do, we may have underestimated. And it's not that we didn't do it, but just really that, the most basic of things. So like we might have, the train on the code of conduct and, drugs are, 2 days off, 2 days suspended, do your intervention, those kinds of things. But like just the simple, like, how are we going to do hall passes this year, right? How are we going to emphasize what behavior is in the cafeteria or the bathroom or wherever? I know that there's notifications that you all get at times. We had some intense situations on campuses this year. And so again, a fight is not a fight, is not a fight. And at the same time, our campuses are loving. I do want to share that Claudio and I had an opportunity to visit with the campus earlier this week, and I'll be honest. It was with our colleagues at the academies at South. They love their kids. They love their campuses. Some of the teachers here have been at South well over 10 years. They started when they were 12. They also shared that there's groups of kids that have graduated from college and are choosing to come back and teach at South Street. So to your point, Ms. Parra, those are pieces that they recognize. There's love for community. Our hearts for the security there, and I want to be very clear, they are staffed for much more than 3. It's been tough with the vacancies, and so I'm really proud that we're going to have a job fair there soon, and tweet it and do the social media. But I think across our district, I mean, it's there are nuances that happen, from year to year in different pockets and different places. And so I'm taking a long time, and I'm sorry, Member Prescott, but I can't pinpoint it with the numbers, but these are the stories and the conversations we've had. So.
And, President Olson and Clerk Prescott and Board, I think those were great examples and fantastic job. I think the other thing, when you wear a teacher hat, these big incidents, I agree with the frequency and the intensity. I think it's a great answer. And, we're showing you the major incidents. As a former teacher, what can drive you crazy as a teacher is the smaller stuff, right? And so we're not showing you how many F-bombs were on a campus, or how many kids were caught in a bathroom. We're trying to show you the big picture. And so I would guess, and we can take a look at it, if we look at the minor incidents, maybe the minor incidents are up. And that's what the lived experience of an educator might say, well, it's those minor incidents that are bothering, not necessarily the big incidents. So we can unpack that as well.
Yeah. And thank you both for that perspective. I think that's helpful, and I really appreciate hearing it. So don't worry that you were taking too long. It's helpful to hear. I guess, yeah, one thing that I'm potentially concerned about is just, again, knowing that we have had shortages of security, and that's influenced how many referrals they've done. Does that mean that some of the data is lower than what is happening on campuses? And that, I think the intensity part is a good part. I just, and I don't have a strict evidence for that or even understand that, but it did occur to me that that's a possibility based on what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing here in the data.
Yeah, Board Member Prescott, President Olson, Board Member Prescott, absolutely. I think every year it's our team's job to work with campuses, to hold campuses accountable as much as we can to get the data into the system. And so reporting structures, reporting timelines is also critically important. And so the team works to catch up on referrals, make sure stuff's inputted. And so their job is to continue to chase that on campuses. So that certainly could be a part of the story too.
Madam President.
Ms. Parra.
Just one additional comment on here. I love these ideas. I also think that we need to have something for parents and families. So we have targeted skill building for students. I think it should be targeted skill building for students and families, parents and caregivers. We have to include our parents in this work. They have to be our partners in this work because they can help us reinforce behaviors at home. Kids are not with us the majority of the time. I think we have that, the larger public has this flawed assumption that kids are with us like 80% of their lives, and they're not, right? Like it's 15% of their time is spent in school. So like they're out in the community, and we need parents and families to help us with this work. And we also, the last couple of years have been incredibly traumatic for parents, families, students, and we have to give people permission, and not permission, but give people grace, but also encourage healthy mental health coping skills. And how do we do that with our families, right? So including them in this work, I think is absolutely critical. So I would love to see how we think about that. And I've told you both, I'm happy to be a thought partner and a collaborator. This is the work that is incredibly, I think both of us care deeply about, and all of us on this board care deeply about, all of us in this system. And so however we can be helpful, just know that you have a partner.
Mr. Marquez.
Thanks, Madam President. Just a really brief comment. Dr. Gesson, last week I was able to shadow you And, I know there was a lot of incidents that one day that I shadowed you, so I got a glimpse into what you and your team do every day. And specifically, Mr. Correa, you got a big job, and I know that day you were very busy. And so I know that the data is hard to look at, and hard to figure out what are the right interventions, because we have a big school district and a lot of students. But I'm excited to have you officially next school year come into this role and really wrap your whole brain around how do we get to some solutions. And I think like Board Member Pata said, I think we all want to be thought partners in trying to figure this out and how do we make strides forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, governing board members. One more comment and then I'll quickly move on. I also just want to point out, both in some of the trainings, back to, we know that restorative justice and restorative practices have been an important conversation for years, and we're in a strong direction pre-pandemic, and so we haven't had the number of trainings that we'd had in the past, and so there is a renewed commitment to that and just really working on the system and how we get that out. And staff have asked for it, and that's the beauty. Recently, the group shared that we did a lot. We feel good about the relationship building and building community, but need more work on the repair. I think you heard Ms. Jimenez even talk about with our ESPs doing de-escalation training and whatnot. So that commitment is there as well. So I'll move to student intervention data. Again, this data will truly only be for this school year from first through third quarter. In a sense, tracking intervention data it's been done for years, but very individual by either campus or roles on campuses, as opposed to PXU-wide, district-wide. So just want to frame that we'll look at the data from this year, and hopefully we'll move into trend data as we move forward next year. This slide just represents that code of conduct. You have, on the website we have it, but we also have some of the proposals going home. When we assign consequences now, we also assign interventions, and so this is just an example of some of that continuum of interventions. But what I'm really excited to share is about our referral for intervention process. The RFI process is something that I think pretty much every staff member can tell you what that is, and it's been around, I think, on various campuses, and again, very individual for years. But when we went into virtual learning, and suddenly in the 1920 school year, we needed a way so that if teachers, if staff members were talking to a student, recognized that there was something needed, everyone's at home, and so how are we going to get that out? And so that went into an online form. And so now that we're back, we've continued it. We look at it every year and are streamlining it. But just to know what you're looking at in the next two slides, the left side is the general category that any staff member can do an RFI for. In the middle, you'll see a general description of various needs that a student might have. And then the campus role is decided by the campus in that category. Where does it go? So for example, if it's one of those academic concerns that a teacher's, sharing something above and beyond what's going on in their classroom, that generally routes to the counseling assistant, and then they figure out who that grade level counselor is. So just so you know, on the next two slides, these various categories, and for the public to take a look at. This school year, we have the combined totals throughout Phoenix Union. You'll see all of those categories and those numbers. If you add them up, it's over 10,000 referrals for students. And actually, it's not necessarily 10,000 separate students. It could be that a student had a primary and a secondary area of concern, but those are the totals that we're able to from pulling that, since we had that, the form is assigned by campus, but we have access to it district-wide. You'll see, as was brought up, attendance is in the lead. That also could include, being late consistently as well. And that is a frustration. And so really working through interventions on students who are chronically missing school or absences. We saw a video that shared some of that. It's work that we're continuing to try to figure out. And we have a lot of staff dedicated to trying to work through that. On this slide, you'll see again RFI, by gender. I mentioned before that you'd see that, there's referrals, across, not reported, could be for any variety of reasons. And so staff, may not know a lot about the student, but knows the need. And then by grade level. I'll point out that you see freshmen and sophomores typically as the highest. We didn't unpack all of our discipline data for you by grade level, but we have taken a look at that, and you will see also more behavior challenges adjusting to high school start off. And so just kind of also a reminder and plug that all of the work we're also doing with freshmen continues to be key, but again, referrals across the gamut.
For your slide on, it's broken down by gender.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that I can understand better, and you may not even know the answer to this. So, green is female, male is. Are we thinking that for the breakdown, is it like, what's it called? Like social standards or norms or the things, so like we have more young women getting social emotional help than our young men. Is there like a stigma, I guess is the word? I can't, how like we sometimes get in these strict women ask for help and young men or males, and I'm trying to be gender inclusive, so that's why I'm stuttering so much. But do you think that contributes to the varying of the numbers of why we have more people who identify as female getting help than we do with males? And then same thing for, and you may not know the answer. On the other end of that spectrum, it seems like we're having more interventions for our males in academics and attendance. Is that, do we know, like, I would love to see like stuff behind this data. Does that make sense?
Madam President, Governing Member Ross, it does.
Okay.
I don't know that I can answer that
Okay.
question. I think from, my colleagues in teaching and learning can tell me more about, what's happening in the academic world. I think that when you look at national statistics, we had a webinar recently and we look at mental health. You do still have, females reporting at much higher levels, but what you see is a trend that males are also self-reporting more than they have. These are actually going to be referrals made by staff as either having identified something,
Gotcha.
observed something, or a student shared something
So this is not
specifically
self-reporting.
with them.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, it could be that a student told a staff member and then they made the referral for them, but it's a whole combination. So that is a good question, and we will continue to unpack more and more to learn about, what we know about our students and how that information is coming across.
Thank you.
And so just want to, wrap up with the prevention and intervention steps, just to give you a little bit of information. So we have a new position also in Phoenix Union next year, the Director of Multi-Tiered Systems of Supports. And what that's really doing is taking, our wraparound services and really having, that we're already in our division, but a dedicated department to really focusing on that tier 1, which is prevention. And so we'll do some work later this month in Admin Academy and then throughout the summer and launch of school to really make sure that we're starting the school year strong with prevention. We know that there's a great deal of work in Tier 1 that really impacts and supports most students. And then you move into that more narrow, tiered, you might target certain groups that need supports, and then down to that individual in tier 3. But it's really about strengthening systems, processes, interventions that we already have in Phoenix Union, and really systematizing. That even includes, are we organizing it the best way in our student information systems? Is it easily accessible by staff? The teacher in the classroom, support members, so that we can, track and progress monitor to wrap around. So a lot of work and next steps in that area. And then last, before I hand over the clicker, student code of conduct update. I'm going to be fairly brief because we have a month to figure this out before you take action on that. I know it's towards the end of the school year, but we'll be happy to continue to meet with staff as needed. We did have focus groups. We asked our administrators to have focus groups with students, with staff, with families. We do have primarily one big change or recommendation. Go ahead.
Thank you, and maybe you're going to get to this. I know that in past years we had a whole handbook committee that went ahead and addressed this. Did we have a committee this year, or did we just have the focus groups and community feedback?
We didn't have a full committee this year. We met in admin groups and had staff meet with them. Implementation was really, again, part of our goal coming back, but we are fully going to run committee next year. But we'll continue to listen, to staff and students over the next month if we need to have more of those conversations. So I will want you to focus in on the page about the fights. There's some differentiation that we are recommending to put some space between fights and assaults. To be brief in that, we can have some pretty gnarly situations on campuses, and sorting through that. What we have is we have the 2 days for the fights, and an assault can look very different. And really, when we have a really tough situation and the campus needs some time and some space to have safe return and reentry and safety plans, there are times that we feel like it might be coded even more severe. And so we have 2-day choices, or like an endangerment choice that's like a 9-day and a due process. And so we're looking for something in the middle, but would like for you all to take a look at that. And we can, again, engage with you all, engage with staff, engage with families before we come back in June to take action. And then there's some, go ahead. Yeah, there's some new pages. Remember, the Student and Family Handbook is more than the Code of Conduct, more resources, and we'll be bringing that back in a month. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Claudio.
Excellent, thank you. Turn it on here. Good evening, President Alston, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Guestin, and community. Buenas tardes. I also want to continue with some commentary around some of the things that we've heard tonight. It's just marvelous to see our students, right, the great work that they're doing, the future that they have as a result of the good work being done by our staff. And so it is Staff Appreciation. I wanted to just recognize that again, and just mention that my wife and my daughter are teachers. In fact, my daughter is a first-year teacher, so just a huge recognition to our teachers and our staff for the good work that they do each and every day for all of our children. So I appreciate that. And then just wanted to, I have the second leg of the presentation. It's not too long, but it's quite heavy. So I'll present on 2 items, provide a safety division update as well as a law enforcement update. And so we'll start with our safety division. And previously, this governing board did create a new safety division. So I'm very honored to serve as the executive director in this area. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. We've also updated and aligned job descriptions for our campus safety teams. And we're also in the final stages of interviewing and selecting our Director of Campus and Community Safety, and will soon begin the interview process for our District Safety Supervisor positions. These additional resources will do a better job of supporting our campuses district-wide, especially from a regional model. We've also extended contract lengths for our safety teams, formerly security, now safety teams. This will create that flexibility, especially at the beginning of the year when we know that we need to do the appropriate training and preparation for a successful school year. So we're poised for that. And I'd like to just shout out and commend our security collaborative. Vanessa Jimenez was instrumental in this work, so I appreciate all that good work in this area. In addition, we're a part of a national school safety and security cohort, and we thank Dr. Geston. He's part of the Chiefs for Change, and he's brought that resource for us. And this is an opportunity for us as a district to learn from others the great practices that are taking place around safety. And we hope to contribute to that learning nationally as well. So we look forward to that learning. And then finally, want to share with you some of the research that is being done at this time around studying safety, or district safety programs and law enforcement. So we're going to bring that back to you. And now I want to transition to law enforcement notification and arrest data. And Governing Board, as a reminder, here are the incidents that require law enforcement notifications. And then this is a chart, law enforcement notifications and student arrest related to campus behavior. And so we have seen these data in the past. And again, consistent with what Ms. Tarkenton has shared, a four-year view, a four-year trend, beginning in school year 2018-2019, and then all the way through this year, third quarter. And so as we see with the other data that were shared, we also have a trend downward. So law enforcement notifications are down as well as arrests. So we're happy with that. And we wanted to expand on that a little bit. So this data here, law enforcement, campus support, and interactions, this is specifically for this school year, quarters 1 through 3. And these are data provided to us by our school safety officers. They're off-duty, if that's what I wanted to say, off-duty officers that we work with. And so they provide this information. So if we start at the very left of it, in the gold bar, there have been 422 police contacts from the first 3 quarters. 298 reports have been taken during these 3 quarters. And then on the x-axis, or on the horizontal line going to the right, kind of a description of some of those contacts. And so I want to unpack some of them. What might the other include? It includes, for example, impounding contraband. So there's a drug incident at the school. Our SSO goes down there and retrieves that material, impounds it. Sometimes there are vehicle accidents near or on campus involving, or suspect of having students or involving staff, and so our SSOs go to support that area. Proactive patrols is another area, or staging on or near campus. Typically, these are results of a threat, a social media threat, the day before or the evening before. The administration, in consultation with the staff, requests an officer's presence just to make sure that everybody's going to be safe. I think parents and staff feel better when there's a threat looming, and then law enforcement is present to ensure that they're safe. And so that's another area. And then finally, in this area, consulting. It's typically when parents come to school, they trust our staff, they trust our social worker, our administrators, and they're seeking support for something that happened at home during the weekend, a burglary, a break-in, sometimes more serious stuff like abuse. And so they report it to our staff, and obviously report it to our school or our school safety officers, and they support in that way. Continuing on that continuum, other areas where our school safety officers support include, again, drug paraphernalia, mandatory Department of Child Services reporting, welfare checks, missing or found adolescents. Those are the kind of examples. And I just want to draw your attention to a discrepancy here. Here on this is the school safety officer logs. They indicate 3 arrests, and in this slide here, we indicate 5. So we obviously work with our SSOs, but they're not always available. Police department also have shortages. So in these other cases, other law enforcement patrol officers come and manage that situation and facilitate that situation. So I just wanted to draw that discrepancy there. I also wanted to talk about our past and present law enforcement models. In year 2019 and 2020 and in previous years, our district safety model included school resource officers. We had an IGA in place with the City of Phoenix, and then at least half of the SROs were paid out of the school safety grant. Now, we no longer have SROs. We still have the school safety grant, and that money goes to our social workers. So not SROs, but social workers. So just wanted a distinction. This past school year in 2020-2021 is an anomaly year, as Alyssa shared. And for 3/4 of that year, we didn't have many students. We virtually had no students on campuses. They were learning virtually at home. And so during the first 3 quarters, when we did have a few students on campus and there was some type of urgent matter, a legal matter, a reportable matter, we contacted Crime Stop or 911 for emergencies. But during that fourth quarter is when we started to need the support of our school safety officers. And so they were there on our campus. They went to campuses as needed. They weren't staged at the campus. They went to campuses as needed. And so we continued this model this school year. We have continued that in the SSO School Safety School Officer Program. No IGA with the City of Phoenix, though City of Phoenix is an approved vendor. And again, on a daily basis rotation, when available, we have school safety officers that are trained to support schools, and typically many of them are former school resource officers.
May I?
You may.
For the part where you're saying the SSOs, that's what we're calling them now?
School safety officers.
Went to the campuses as needed. Is the as needed the chart before?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then next steps around school safety. We're excited about the work that our participatory budgeting is focused on. They're focused on safety. And so I'm hearing some really cool proposals. They're voting on some of the proposals this May. And we plan to implement some of these winning ideas for next school year. These are students, staff, and families engaged in this work. It's really cool work. We're also researching models nationwide of similar districts and how they manage safety, to include law enforcement or no police officers, school-based police officers. We continue to explore victim advocates as part of the broader solution, maybe from a regional model. We'll continue to explore that. And then this summer, we aim to propose a short-term and or long-term solution or solutions to law enforcement usage. So look forward to that. And then digging deeper into the research around law enforcement, we're in partnership with Grand Canyon Institute. They have identified 46 districts across the U.S. that have changed their relationship with school-based police officers. And from those 46 this group has selected 5 with 1 alternate. And these 5 are important because they are similar in student demographics, size, and values to Phoenix Union High School District. And then, so what are they researching? They've already begun this work, researching, interviewing, and case studies around safety personnel all the way down to law enforcement interactions as part of their safety models. And then a final report provided to us by late June. And so with that, I turn it over to Dr. Geston for discussion.
Excellent. So, Governing Board, thank you for enduring a long annual presentation. We'll now just open it up to any question from the beginning of the presentation all the way to law enforcement at the end, and we'll turn it back over to President, but any of the 4 of us are happy to answer any question.
Mr. Marquez?
Yes, thanks, Madam President. I just have quick question on the Grand Canyon Institute. Is there a report available that they've published, and who, is it David Wells or somebody else at the Grand Canyon Institute that you're working with?
So the Madam President or Board Member Marquez, we will have a report by the end of June and a preliminary one around the beginning of June. So we'll have a preliminary report beginning of June and then a final one toward the end of June.
Thank you.
Yeah, President, also members of the board, we're excited about this partnership. Just in that initial research, we found out there's 46 districts like us that completely changed their relationship with law enforcement, especially around the time of George Floyd and the major Black Lives Matter movement. And so there are 46 districts like us grappling with what do you do with law enforcement if you don't have school-based policing anymore. And so they, of course, narrowed that 46 down to 5, are doing a really big deep dive into those districts to see what can we learn from them, and are there models that we can use or modify. And so we're really excited to take a look at these districts, and if we don't get enough from those 5 districts, there's a 6th alternative, but we also know we could go study those other ones as well to really try to rethink, even from a national perspective, what does this look like. So excited to be a part of that.
Mr. Prescott.
Thank you. Now for the rest of my questions on my page. So bear with me. Thank you both for the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Gustin, for sharing your input, and thank you everybody for working on this. I am really excited to hear about some of the things we've been working on. I think this reflects a lot of the things we as board members have been suggesting and asking the district to look into, so I'm happy about that. I also, you both mentioned this, and I want to publicly recognize this as just how much COVID interrupted everything we were doing. To give an example here at the board, this was the first time we've done in-person public comment since March 2020. It's 26 months that we haven't actually had people give in-person comment. And a lot of the programs were the same way. I was telling somebody the other day about our safety programming. I was like, oh yeah, we used to have this really great restorative justice training, and we had 200 people attend, and there were police officers there, and there were people from social justice orgs there, and of course lots of teachers. I was like, and the last time we did that was 2019, and we haven't done it since. And so the fact that we're revisiting some of those things over the summer, I think makes sense. Where in a lot of ways we're having to restart a lot of programs that we were building on, and then they had to stop because of the realities of the pandemic. So I fully recognize that as we're talking through all this, and I appreciate our work to get those things restarted. My questions, one is on PB. I know that we had a little bit of an update where we're going to be voting on in May, and that we'll be seeing those results from there, and we're hoping to implement them next school year. Do we, will those be brought before the board for final approval in June, or what are the next steps beyond the vote?
Yeah, President Alston and Clerk Prescott and the board, yeah, Alyssa can give an update, but just like in the past with regular PB, after the voting is done, then we bring that to the board, give a full report on what that looks like. And you guys can feel free to give a glimpse into maybe a couple of the things that have, because they're at the point now where we're identifying these major themes that have come forward. So maybe give a quick glimpse, but you will soon hear, exactly what some of those ideas are.
Thank you, President Alston, Dr. Gesson, Member Prescott, Governing Board. And so, yes, Cindy Tercero and district steering committees are busy right now doing Shark Tank presentations. They actually, for the past couple of days, have been pitching their ideas. They've also been recorded on Teams. So I can't wait to get in there and do some homework. There is a kind of an expert team, I think it's called like the Leadership Accountability Team, that gives some feedback and just about feasibility. So for example, when they were capital projects, if they wanted, for example, one of the water bottle filling stations in a certain area, you needed Jared Reynolds and part of the logistics team to take a look at, can the plumbing be done there? So hopefully it won't be quite as complicated. Cindy actually has been sending a couple emails and texts, so let me just give you a quick idea. some of the items that people are requesting, and I couldn't tell you if it's the parent group, the staff group, or the teacher group, are for example, the restorative trainings that we've been doing before, and to your point, Member Para, wanting the parents to be able to have those opportunities to have similar trainings that we've had, kind of a safety team expert committee that I think above and beyond the new division, but having some student membership, staff membership, and just a whole lot more that is so common sense when we think about the most fundamental pieces of safety. So I'll do better and give Dr. Gustin an update to get to you all.
Thank you for that. And then a couple more questions from my end. The one thing that I would like to address is that I know we had a pretty in-depth discussion on safety in the wake of the shooting at Chavez, unfortunately, a few months back. And out of that, we talked about a lot of measures, specifically around security, training security, hiring more security, increasing pay to hire more. And some of that was addressed tonight. We heard from Ms. Jimenez about some of those trainings going on. But at the same time, also hearing that maybe we don't have enough security still at campuses. And I recognize you may not have this data with you currently, but it would be great to see where we're at in terms of hiring additional security, just to get a better idea, and are additional actions needed? I know we did an increase in pay for security at that time so that we could fill some of those shortages. Do we need to do more? Or are there other actions that we need to take? Would be something I'd be really interested in. I know that training and recruitment of security staff is something that the board other board members have spoken to. And then I'm also curious, it was mentioned the African American Equity Initiative and some of our work on that. And I know as a board we were provided the report on some of the findings from some of those initial focus groups. And I would love to learn more if there are any specific actions that have come out of that. I think that obviously some of the other items that were suggested tonight and were talked about address this, right? When we're talking about some of the implicit bias training, some of the other investments that we're making, I think that does address it. But if there were any other additional specific actions that came out of that equity initiative that we could talk about as part of it, I know would be of interest, and previous board members have also raised that as well.
Great. President, also members of the board, we'll follow up on both of those, and I do know as we resent back to the board the data around the Black focus groups, I think we've heard from enough board members that at a future board meeting we should maybe unpack those findings again, and then what are some next steps, to your point, what actions have we already taken and what actions might we take thereafter. And then I think we can we'll send to the board an update on safety vacancies. What have we filled, what's not filled. We'll let you know how many security safety positions are on every campus, how many are currently filled. And then as you heard, we're doing a specific job fair in South Phoenix, which we're excited about because a lot of our vacancies are in South Phoenix and at South Mountain. And so we're targeting that particular area, but we can send you all a full update as well.
Okay. That'd be great. And I'd just like to restate for everybody here, I've said this publicly a few times before. I do not think that continuing to rely upon off-duty officers is beneficial to the district. It's a continued use of district money for this, for police officers. And I think that money can be better spent in other places. I think that I'm really excited about the solutions that come out of the PB models and being able to use some of the funds that are currently being used for police officers and putting them towards those PB projects. So thank you all. That concludes my page of comments and questions.
Ms. Ross. and then
Speaking
Ms.
of
Clara.
regaining our momentum, Dr. G, this is actually for you. Where are we with head, hands, heart? I haven't heard anything throughout COVID. Do we plan on picking it back up? Have we been secretly, privately implementing it?
Excellent. President Olson, Board Member Ross, and Board, believe it or not, we are successfully completing year one of Head, Heart, Hands, and we started with the heart. this year, where every single, started with every single certified staff member had to go through 5 trainings on the heart to look at things like social emotional learning and trauma and all the things that we've talked about. And just to give you a quick story, so yes, we actually, year 1 this year, we have teams working over the summer, and this is actually Thea and primarily Tony Camp working on it. This summer we'll work on new trainings for the next school year, so kind of level 2. But the story that I will tell is to tell you how it's starting to embed itself. That we had our monthly meeting with CTA leadership with Dr. Coleman and all of our unit chairs, and this was one of the items that we brought up, is what do we have? We have 1,700 certified employees that need to go through the training. We have 191 that haven't even started yet, which also means that most of them have started and finished, so it's a really good, but the conversation was supposed to be about how do we handle the 200 that haven't started yet. But the unit chairs told really incredible stories about teachers having just great aha moments. Like, I didn't know that mindfulness could work in a classroom. I didn't know that social emotional, right, these skills and relationship building before I get into content really works in classrooms. And we, as our exec team knows, had a really cool discussion about how important these heart trainings are that will eventually lead to better achievement, right? If we got to first get to your heart before we get to your head and the learning. And so yes, year 1, but our team knows we had to do it kind of virtual modules this year, that as we move forward, that will get larger and more robust. But I don't know, probably not much to add, but it was a really great discussion. And year 1, despite where we were at, was great success. Go for it.
We had a teacher, a unit chair share that a teacher who, maybe wouldn't have done this in the past, took his class on a meditation walk to start off the class period. So we're seeing a lot of it in practice, and that's super exciting. So that's where we want it to show up, not just in the books.
Ms. Parra?
I love that so much. You don't understand how much I love that. But like, that's the goal, right? Is like, when I talk about like giving kids skills, that's what I mean. Because they can take a moment for themselves to calm themselves down, to do some deep breathing. If we give them the tools and we give their parents and caregivers the tools to reinforce this behavior, like that will help us so much. So like, I love that. Thank you for leading on that. And I also just want to reiterate, like, whatever we do going forward, like, we have to do it in partnership with families and caregivers and the people that are with the kids. I think as we think about, because ultimately we're here for teaching and learning, we're here for academic achievement, we are here to make sure that our kids get caught up, that they have the tools that they need to be successful for life after high school, right? And so like, when we think about addressing the impacts of unfinished learning, like, these things matter. And so like, how are we setting a new baseline for ourselves on this work, so that it is part of teaching and learning, that it is part of, like, the goal is to increase attainment for kids, get them ready for college, get them ready for life after high school, whatever that path is that they choose, that they are prepared to do it. And this is an integral part of becoming an adult, like knowing how to manage your emotions and knowing how to calm yourself down when you get frustrated. And as someone who is learning and unlearning every single day things that we have been conditioned with, like, you know, it's something that we have to model. And it's so great that like our employees are learning this too, because they can also then reinforce it and be role models for the kids. So like, I love that. I'm so excited.
But also be more patient, understanding our kids, and not try to suspend them and kick them out of school all doggone time.
And that.
Anyone else? Mr. Prescott.
So I lied. I wasn't done with my page. I missed something. I do have one other remark and comment just for consideration. I know that on one of the slides for future actions was the victim advocate, and taking a look at that. I was very happy to see that there. I will add that I know in that initial discussion where we started discussing the idea for that, we talked about it primarily from a legal perspective and of helping victims navigate the legal system. One thing that's come to my attention since that conversation is it was reports from several youth that had been victims of serious incidents, that they didn't necessarily, in addition to the legal support, they didn't necessarily feel like they had the social and emotional support. They didn't have the referrals to social workers, the referrals to psychologists, because of the nature of their particular incidents. So I think one thing to consider as we're taking a look at that victim advocate model is not only how do we help students navigate the legal system, but if they are the victim of a serious crime or other incident, how can we also connect them to other supports and resources?
Okay, anyone else? Last call on this issue. Mr. Marquez, do you have anything? Okay. Oh, yes, of course, Mr. Prescott.
I just want to say, I don't think, a lot of us make remarks up here. I don't think it's appropriate to call people out for speaking, especially when it's, when they have the right to do so. So that's all for me.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be offensive. If I offended you, Mr. Prescott, I apologize. I apologize. The next item is 9H, approval of memorandum of agreement for TOA, Phoenix Educator Preparatory Program Management. Dr. Gaston.
President Alston and members of the board, I'll be very brief on H. I'll speak to H and I really quickly. These are connected to each other. As you know, we're launching Phoenix Educator Preparatory, a school that's going to train future educators, teachers, counselors, social workers, etc. We are nearing the end of year one of planning. Next year is really the main year of planning, and this is bringing on a teacher perspective to help with that training. You heard tonight a question from the podium. Is there going to be a CTE focus inside of Phoenix Ed Prep? Absolutely, as Ms. Gales knows, and her team. We have a planning team with Dr. Elena Adams. I have been meeting with ASU, CTE. You would know this very well. The senator is a former CTE, that all education development, early childhood ed. These teacher programs do run through CTE, so there will be a strong CTE component, even if it doesn't explicitly say it in the job description. We recommend approval of 9H and 9I.
Should we take them separately?
You can do them separately.
Okay.
Unless someone wants to make a motion to combine them.
I motion that we combine them.
Madam, I second that motion.
Excuse me, Ms. Ross, could you?
I apologize. I motion that we combine the two items.
Item H.
H.
And item I.
I.
Item 9.
All right, Lynn, combine them and approve them.
Yes, can we do that, Lynn?
Combine
We
them
can
and
do that?
approve them, yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I motion that we combine 9H and I and approve them.
Okay.
I second.
A motion to approve items 9H and 9I has been made by Ms. Ross and seconded by Ms. Para. Is there any discussion? On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. The next item is 12A, discussion of COVID spread and mitigation, including masking and vaccines with potential action. Dr. Geston.
President, also members of the board. Board, thank you for hanging in there. We're getting close to the finish line for the evening. As I said in a previous board update, we are bringing this particular item back, and this might be the last time that we bring this item back unless we see another major spike in COVID. We're tracking that closely. Just want to remind the board and the broader community that COVID is still in our community, still on our campuses, and still in our classrooms. So we're watching that data and tracking that data closely. You do also know that Maricopa County is publishing their data very differently. As you know, COVID cases right now, the major indicator that the county is collecting and what they're following is cases per 100,000, hospital admissions, and bed utilization. So it's not necessarily percent positivity, so they've shifted what that looks like. The trend is down, as you can see. We're also tracking this new slight uptick in COVID in America, here in our own broader community as well. We, in our particular zip codes, are still all green. On our campuses, this is small, but I will point it out. You would then ask us, well, what does it look like on our campuses? Still very, very minimal. We, last week, when we first decided to remove masks for 3 to 4 or 5 weeks ago, we had 4 to 5 cases across the district. This past week, we have 13, so out of 32,000 people, it's still very small. But we continue to track the spread of COVID on our campuses. And we continue to recommend masks and continue to do COVID vaccinations and testing. Even though many entities have stopped doing so, we continue to offer free testing and COVID. And at this point, don't have any recommendations, but just wanted to bring it back for one final time to see if there's anything we need to hear from the board. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Gustin. The next item is 12B, approval of the superintendent's contract renewal. Is there a motion to approve the employment contract renewal of Superintendent Dr. Chad Gustin for the period of July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2025, thus expiring the existing contract on June 30, 2022? And is there a second?
I'm just going to jump in here to that the motion should reflect that the terms of the contract should be those that were discussed in executive session.
Madam Chair, I would like to motion that we approve the superintendent's contract renewal with the recommendations that were discussed in executive session.
So moved, or second?
I made the motion.
A motion has been made by Ms. Para, seconded by Mr. Prescott. Is there any discussion? Mr. Marquez?
Yeah, I'm going to abstain from voting tonight, so I want to talk back to Dr. Gustin. I would love to do you at your current contract rate with the terms outlined in it. I have a hard time voting for new contract, specifically when we haven't hit the goal yet for the lowest paid employees in the district, at $14 an hour for next school year. And I think I've expressed to you my support to see you continue on in this position for the next 3 years or longer, however long you choose to want to do this job. But I think that's where my mind is at, is really on thinking about, should those at the top sacrifice more, even more than our chiefs or anybody else in admin, when we still haven't hit our goals, to pay those at the bottom a little bit more. And just an example, I'm a Madison parent. I know your children have gone to Madison. So very specifically, this school year, I know there's a lot of important jobs in Phoenix Union, but one of the important jobs that parents make the most noise about in Madison is after-school leaders. So the MAC Club, Madison Adventure Club, they pay $13.20 an hour. And at their very last board meeting in Madison, they just increased it to $15 an hour. because there's a giant wait list. You know, they're meeting the market demand of what our market is demanding of filling these roles. You know, and I hear Mr. Neal tonight say that he was driving Uber and working 3 jobs. So it's not just the people at the bottom that are making $14 an hour. It's, you know, everybody in education is not making enough. And I know you're not making enough based on your leadership experience and capabilities and everything you could make if you did not choose a public service career in education. So I want to make it clear that I am not voting no. You still have my full support for however long you choose to be superintendent. But I do feel like I would like to abstain from this vote. And I think the second point that I'd like to make is more of a process point. I think the other reason I feel like I need to abstain, and I want to make sure the board attorney has. I throw out a disclaimer, say this is my concerns about process is that when we're considering compensation for our leaders that make the very most, whether that's Dr. Crow, the governor of Arizona, superintendents that lead large school districts in Arizona, I would like to see the final draft of a contract before I vote on something. And I know in executive session we instructed the board attorney to draw up some terms, but I haven't seen. You know, I'm a trust and verify. You know, I want to verify what I see on paper. So I think that's part of my concerns as well. And I think from an abundance of transparency, I understand that other school districts in Arizona do this the same way, that these contracts are normally negotiated in executive session, but I know probably on not just this issue, on a lot of things, you know, that have come to the board since I've been on the board. You know, I ask a lot of questions about process, like why is that the way it's always been done? And so that's another process question. Why don't we say in executive session, yeah, these are the terms, we come back next month and say, you know, here's what the final draft looks like, post it in board docs and let anybody in the community come and decide if they want to weigh in. I think that's a transparency and part of our job to give oversight in this district. So those are my 2 concerns, is the process, you know, is there transparency? And 2, you know, when we're talking about the current economy that we're in and people at the bottom are driving Uber and making $14 an hour, I hope that, you know, those of us that are fortunate enough to lead the district at the highest levels would, you know, think about that. And I also want to point out that I know you have specifically said that you do not actually want an increase. So I appreciate that, and I hope that you would honor that and stay in line with, you know, the current terms of your contract, which are in line with, I think, annual raises that other district employees make as well. So that's all I have to say. And again, I want to make it perfectly clear that you do have my support, and I don't want you to see this abstention in any way to mean anything otherwise.
Is there any further discussion? If not, on the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? Yes. Let the record show that Mr. Marquez has abstained from voting on item 12B. The motion carries. The next item is 12C, approval of recommendation to expel student 20212206. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation to expel the student identified as 20212206, and is there a second?
I make an alternative motion.
A motion has been made by Mr. Marquez.
Or did you make the motion?
I was going to propose a alternative motion, if that's allowed at this time.
I think you were in the middle. Somebody had just said so, or was moving.
I had said
You
so
can make
moved.
an alternative motion if this motion fails, right? Did you say you just withdrew your motion?
No, I said, I was in the process of saying so moved. I think all three of us kind of spoke at the same time.
What are the Robert rules of, who speaks first? Is that how this goes?
We're going to go with the motion.
Yeah.
If it fails, then you can make your alternative motion.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so a motion has been made by Mr. Prescott.
Yeah, and to be clear, my motion is to approve the recommendation to expel this.
Okay, and who was the second, Ms. Parle? On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
There was not,
Yeah, President
I guess-
Alston, members of the board, if you guys would like, Board President, at your discretion, you guys can have discussion on this.
okay.
Yes, you can have discussion as
Back
long as you
up.
don't provide any student
Sure.
identifiable
Yeah.
information.
Yeah. I don't think this is a surprise. I voted the same way last month on the similar issues regarding different students. Again, I just, want to say again that this is something our society's got to figure out. We just sat through a whole bunch of student safety data, and there's a lot of issues facing our schools right now. In the military, we talk a lot about second and third order effects. What are the second and third order effects of kicking a student out of our school? And in the state of Arizona, where we don't have laws that are inclusive to students that are in these situations, there's not a single public school that has to take this student if we do this. There's charter schools that might take him. I'm sure their average daily enrollment dollars will go up, and they'll be happy to take a student that gets expelled from one of our schools. But our public schools, our public district schools, I think there's dereliction of duty happening right now. Because if we say you're not welcome here, he can't go to Glendale. I mean, he might try, Glendale Union or Tempe Union or some other district in our state. But there's no requirement under state law in Arizona that any district school has to accept students that are in these situations. And I acknowledge that students in these situations oftentimes will face different consequences outside of the education system and the legal system. And I think that's where these consequences should be handled. I think at our big comprehensive high schools, we talked a lot about what are the interventions in the last presentation. I think we have to figure out what are the interventions before we get to a place where somebody never gets a chance to go to an alternative school. And so I imagine this motion will pass. If it doesn't, what I would propose, and what I would want the rest of the board to think about, is in lieu of expulsion, because the state law does not require us to expel, the state law requires us to have an expulsion hearing. In lieu of expulsion, I would recommend a suspension for the remainder of the school year. And I would recommend an intensive summer intervention as selected by Dr. Geston, whatever he believes is a intensive intervention for a student that has made some very bad choices. And that intervention, I would see it much like a contract. If you meet the requirements of the intervention, we'll offer you a spot at Bostrom in the fall, in August. And if you don't, then you have to go find somewhere else to go to school. But I want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for people to make amends with their mistakes. And I don't know where this student or any other student we expel goes if we continue to expel students like this. That's the end of my comment.
Is there any other discussion, Ms. Ross?
We didn't get to the no votes yet. So my vote is going to be and was going to be no. For basically, I would say similar reasons to Mr. Marquez. I struggle because I know that first and foremost, we're responsible to make sure that everyone is safe. That's a huge responsibility on staff, teachers, governing board members, like there's this huge weight that we always carry, this invisible weight of making sure that we're keeping everyone as safe as possible. And then I told you we'd have to discuss how we're defining safety. But the bigger part of me struggles with isolating, ostracizing, turning our backs on a child. And it makes me uncomfortable, especially when remorse has been expressed. It just makes it's hard for me. I feel like as an institution, we're sometimes the last stop. And so like if we push a kid out, then unfortunately sometimes that kid is just lost. And when I say lost, I mean incarcerated, murdered, or just any number of things. And so I struggle with the responsibility of making this decision that has a huge implication and impact on this child's life.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. Prescott?
Yeah. I will just say, can't comment much on the case due to student privacy, but I will say that my understanding of state law is that we're required to make an expulsion in this particular incident unless the case, the hearing officer suggests something else, and we have a clear reason to do so. Based on the precedent we've had from previous incidents, that's not the case, and I think this makes sense. This is a very serious incident, and we only do these types of expulsions maybe less than 10 times a year, if not like less than 5. So there are consequences when you make very serious decisions.
Mr. Marquez?
Madam President, could I ask either legal counsel to explain for the record the state law requirements
Certainly.
in these scenarios?
Ms. Adams?
So state law requires that a district shall expel a student in this case, ARS 15-841G, but it may be modified on a case-by-case basis. Federal law requires an expulsion for not less than 1 year unless you make specific findings supporting a lesser punishment that you then reduce to writing.
Anyone else? Last call. On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? The motion carries. The next item is 12D, adoption of revised governing board policy JFB, open enrollment on second reading. Is there a motion to adopt the revised governing board policy, and is there a second?
I motion.
Second?
A motion has been made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Prescott. Is there any discussion? On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. The next items are for information only, and no action is required. Item 12E, receipt of revised governing board policy regulation IKF-R, graduation requirements. Dr. Guston?
Yeah, President Alston, members of the board, I'll be very brief because you're just reading this into record. I just want to highlight really quickly, first of all, thank Vice Mayor, who is not here tonight, and Ms. Andrade for their work on this. This is, I think, an important exhibit for us. This has to do with honorary diplomas for deceased students. And so I think this is the right next step. We've been doing it, but haven't had a clear process and a policy for it. And so tonight, the board helps us formalize that process for students who lost their lives.
Mr. Prescott, do you have a comment?
I had a comment or a question, but I think I figured it out. There's a line in here regarding honorary diplomas for United States veterans of various wars in the early 20th century, but didn't list anything after Vietnam. And I assume that is due to the differences with the draft and how that impacted students. So thank you.
Okay. The next item is for information only, no action required. Item 12F, receipt of revised governing board policy regulations GBA-RA, equal employment opportunity. That's it. The next regular meeting of the governing board is scheduled for Thursday, June 2nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. Item 13B is request for future agenda items. Members, are there any items you would like to recommend to be considered for future board agendas? Ms. Parra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one thing I know that the team is working on this, but I want to bring back up a focus on academic achievement and resetting a baseline post-COVID. Where are we? What was the impact of unfinished learning? And really start to address that, and what interventions are we putting in place long-term. So I'd like to have that longer term. I know I've talked to you, Dr. G, so would love to.
Anyone else? Mr. Marquez?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a few suggestions that I'd like to see at future meetings. So number one, I was hoping that maybe in June we could do a deep dive on South Mountain specifically as a case study. We heard a lot from the public tonight, and especially our teachers at South Mountain. When you have three security officers, safety guards, whatever we're calling them at this point, for that campus, if I understand correctly, that's one of our largest properties as a comprehensive campus. And I'd really like to have a full agenda item just dedicated to South Mountain next month to figure out what interventions can we do specifically for that campus in June and July. So that's one as a proposed agenda item for June. And then two, just like process suggestions. We had a lot of public participation early in our meeting, but we've been here since 4:45 and we lost almost everybody. So I was going to propose moving public comment from 4 to 2, so that I think there's a bunch of people online that never got to give their public comment because they were waiting. So moving public comment from number 4 to 2, and then also moving board policies from number 12 to number 3, which is really what I see as like the meat and the substance of what we're here for in voting. And yes, everything else is incredible, and presentations from staff are informative. But I think we're losing our public and our public opportunity to weigh in on the things we're actually voting on as board members if we don't consider moving 12 to number 3 from board policies. And then lastly, again, a process thing. A community member reached out to me today, this week, and suggested adding land recognition at the beginning of all of our board meetings.
What?
Native American land recognition as like a standard practice. And so I would propose doing that during item number 1, and they offered to introduce us to folks at the Indian Legal Program at ASU Law, and they do that at every event they do at ASU Law, from my understanding currently. So I'd like to consider adding that as an addition to item number 1 on our agenda.
Ms. Parra?
Madam Chair, just to be clear, I know that I don't get to dictate the timeline on any of the requests. That is up to your discretion, and working with Dr. Gaston as the chair. So I don't think that this agenda item, you should be told when to put a specific item on the agenda. That is up to yours and Dr. Gaston's discretion. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Ms. Parra. Anyone else have a
I'll
comment?
acknowledge that comment and say, I completely understand. You and Dr. Gaston get to determine what ends up on any given agenda. And I just want to express the urgency of now, based on the community members that gave public comment tonight, to, can we get a full...
Okay, we're stopping. This item is to indicate the items that you'd like to see on the agenda, and you've done that, and not to have a discussion about
Right,
them.
and I did that, and then
And then,
a
yeah.
different board member made a comment that was unrelated.
And then you acknowledge that, and that's great, and so I just want to shut down any more discussion. I think we've got the items to add to the agenda.
Okay, anyone else? I would like to remind the members to stick around and sign the paperwork for SB. Don't run off until you sign. And item 13C is the motion to adjourn.
I motion.
A motion has been made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Prescott. On the motion, those in... It was Aaron. Hold on, I got to get this right. Excuse me, Ms. Ross made the motion, and the second was Mr. Marquez. I beg your pardon, Mr. Marquez. On the motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, indicate by saying nay. The motion carries. We are adjourned.